Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer. And drum roll, please. It's one of my
Yes, we are thrilled to welcome Queen of the Stroking Exercises and U.S. Ice Dance champion Renee Roca.
Hi, fellas. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Crossover exercise today. Renee, a lot of these stubborn men, they like to keep their legs straight on that cross behind outside three. They're not bending the leg properly.
Oh, you're talking about that little forward 3-turn exercise?
Yeah.
The crossovers. Yeah. Soften your knees. Finish. And here's the thing, finish the second crossover, finish it all the way under, and then replace that back foot and, slip the foot forward for the 3-turn.
The key is that back arm.
And keep your arms and head really quiet. And when you do the crossover, finish the second one. I think most people don't finish it and then they get stuck a little bit.
It's a little scary.
So clearly it makes me think I can do it and I cannot. I'm like, yeah, that sounds simple. I'll just keep.
It's a 3-turn. It's a 3-turn. It's just got a little different foot action. That's all, but it's just a 3-turn. So just
it's a little scary.
It's like, what's that bracket exercise? I'm like, that's not a bracket. That's a 3-turn.
Yeah. And I love that you skate with Richard Dwyer all the time.
He's our treasure. He is such a treasure, that man. I adore him. He skates regularly, and I promise, he's out of town right now, but I will get some more footage from him.
Everybody loves watching him
everybody's
skate.
asking Richard. He's like, I don't know what's going on. I get all of these messages from people saying that they saw me, and I'm like, he has so many admirers. He's so special. Yeah. He's 85.
No, 88, I think.
88? Maybe he's.
I think you said how old he was in one of the videos.
Okay. Maybe it is 88. Maybe it is.
Because I think the deal was that you took the video and didn't post it on the one page until months later, and he had already had his birthday.
He had just had his birthday. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, what did you think of the ice dance? There has been so much happening. We had Hawaii and Baker withdraw. Did you see their program on social media?
I did. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Free dance. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely.
Really lovely. Yeah.
It was almost painful to watch in some ways because it was so beautiful and they were so emotional, clearly, with filming it.
Yeah.
It was so interesting that going into nationals, to me, that was the story. That clip went 100% viral. I've never seen people get so emotional and passion just from clips of a free dance. It was quite remarkable.
Yeah. It was special, and it's a pity, really. It makes me sad to think about it because it's almost like it wasn't their choice. Like, injuries and things happened, and it just spun out of control, and there's a point where it's too much. So
I will say the free dance, in some ways that they did, looked like the strongest free dance we've seen in the world this year. The best choreographic free dance, just like from the heart. Kind of a performance.
The music was special. It was poetic, the spoken word. I think that, and it was so quiet, and it was done so gently with strength at the same time I thought that they just interpreted it beautifully. They fell right into the seams of that music and the words and everything. They wove right into it. So yeah, I could watch that program over and over. That's a mark for me of a really beautiful program, is when I see it once and it's just not long enough. I want it to go on, and I have to go back and look again and again.
Yeah. I thought it was phenomenal. I really was blown away. And I felt their absence here. I felt like we had a top team. Everybody else was kind of jockeying for position, but I felt that really strong number 2 team was a little bit missing. And not to say the other teams weren't strong, but in the past we've had like 2 teams that are really pushing for that title, and I didn't feel that from this field just yet. Obviously, Chock and Bates had the flu, and that made things closer, but I missed their absence here. I thought that the depth of the field and the competition was lacking without them.
Yeah, I missed them too. I definitely felt their presence, not there. There was a hole, a little bit of a hole. But at the same time, when there is an unfortunate circumstance like that happens, you're going to see who the next generation stepping up is and who wants to grab for that golden key. So every generation has, everything is cyclical, and the new blood comes in and, you know, it goes around. It's like a circle of life. So things happen and it allows others to move up and different positions to happen. And it's part of sport. It's part of life, really.
What did you feel about Green and Parsons falling behind two teams here rather unceremoniously? They did have some errors and they were behind, Carreira and Ponomarenko and Bratti and Sommerville.
I think Carreira, Ponomarenko were wonderful. And I've never been, I've seen Christina really pick it up in these last couple of years, and I've been a huge fan of hers. Anthony kind of fell into the back scene for me a little bit. She became sort of a star. And I think initially when they were first together, those early years, he was kind of the more big deal. But then she kind of stepped up and came into herself and became the big deal. And I think he kind of got lost a little bit. But this year, especially in their free dance, I noticed him. I did, especially in the back half of their free dance. I just felt like he felt his power and he was giving. And I thought, I wasn't as crazy about their rhythm dance as I was their free dance. I thought their free dance was wonderful. Rhythm dance was not that memorable to me, although I think their quality is terrific. They have great turns and everything, but they kind of found their footing. And I think they felt momentum building all year, and it kind of paid off.
I would like to see them have even stronger music in the free dance, and I'm curious what you both think. I think that the Poeta music I think is good, but I think it could be even. I think they can push further. I think that they have a power.
I think so too. There's some intensity that they can bring if they just kind of keep moving forward artistically, because this is a really comfortable genre for them, I think. But you can tell like there could be more there. But it was really good, and they didn't really step a foot wrong.
Well, I think psychologically, I was just going to say, psychologically, this has to be a huge win for them because they've been kind of stuck in that fourth, fifth place for a couple years. They're not in the main ice dance hub, and this was a huge win. Yeah, Jonathan,
it was a big deal, and I think also, with Chock and Bates not feeling well, they skated beautifully. Ended up, I think, winning the free dance. Closing up points a little bit. So now they're going to be something to be reckoned with.
I'm intrigued because you competed in different sort of eras of ice dance and have choreographed so successfully for this sort of system as well. I'm intrigued because what I seem to notice more and more, back in the 80s, 90s, we were used to the programs that were sort of more medley-like, so that it would start one vibe, in the middle we would get a different emotion, we would end with a different emotion. And now it seems what was a novelty at first of using one piece for the entire program, I'm finding a lot in ice dance, especially in the free dances, a lot of them sort of plateau. And it's not to say that I don't find what they're doing interesting, it's just, it becomes an entire program of almost the same
story, like one story. There isn't a lot of light and shade. I think that's kind of a trend. It's sort of a trendy,
the levels that way.
It's sort of a trendy thing. And way back in the day, I was looking back at some old footage, not of myself, but even beforehand. You would mix a tango with a pop song or you know what I mean? It was like they had no relationship at all to each other. It was just like you sort of just mixed, okay, that piece sounds good, that one is faster, let's just combine it. And you just, like, everything was a little disjointed, and then the theme storyline kind of started filling in. It wasn't just about skating to four pieces, whatever. So now the trend has been for a while to carry a storyline in some way, but you still have to have a change of tempo. You have to show it. It's just that it's not very obvious sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you make of the Pink Floyd free dance and how it stacks up against Wuthering Heights? I think that's one of the interesting storylines of this season.
Personally, I think I definitely prefer the Pink Floyd. I'm a fan of Pink Floyd. I think their abstract movement lends itself to that. I don't know. I think they took a nice approach to it. Yeah, they didn't have a great skate at nationals, but when you're not feeling your best.
Renee, have you ever had to skate with the flu in particular?
Yeah. In fact,
Renee
one
skated
year
with a broken arm at the
I did.
Nationals.
Yeah, I mean, now we hear
did.
of the injuries we hear of. I was
Yeah.
intrigued by the flu because if your stomach, your center of gravity probably isn't right, you're probably not feeling settled in your body. I couldn't imagine having to
Yeah,
do.
years and years ago, I got sick with the flu at nationals, and I got on the free dance warm up, and it wasn't with Gorsha, it was way before Gorsha. But I just remember feeling spatially lost. The floor, the walls, there were people zooming by us on the warm up, and I had such a slow reaction, and it was like you were zoned out. You were sort of not feeling anything, and it's the worst feeling because you have to feel your feet, you have to feel your partner. Where am I going? You have to know where you are, and I couldn't. And I got off the warm up, and I just went to the nursing station or the doctor's station. I just lay there. I'm like, I just can't. So they announced like that I was withdrawing or whatever, but I just couldn't react to anything.
My
It's
nerve for Evan, I was very nervous for him. Obviously, you would imagine the
Yeah.
equilibrium would be all askew for the Twizzles, but
Yeah.
especially that lift where he's just like basically holding her up by the boot. If I were her, I wondered if there was a bit of nerves also to be like, you're gonna
I
get
was worried
nauseous.
for that lift too. I understand the
Huh.
Twizzles because the room spin, you just can't get your bearings. But when it comes to having to put a lift up steady at that angle, yeah. I mean, a girl who's great in a lift can always feel his center and kind of maneuver to it. Because if she feels like the center is moving, she can sort of find it a little bit. And I think it takes a lot from Maddie to feel exactly where it was and set it wherever he was trying to get underneath it. So fortunately, yeah.
It's interesting. I want to talk to you about the different skill sets of a really strong female ice dancer because, Madison Chock has this ability to move, and she really is strong in the lifts and in the spin and just in the overall presentation. Not known for, being as powerful as a skater as someone like Madison Hubble. You have Christina Carreira, who's, a strong single skater. You always pointed out Caitlin Hawaik's 1 foot sequence. What do you think, what does it take for a female skater to have that total package? And is it that unique Tessa Virtue kind of quality? Like, what do you look for in a strong female partner?
It has to be everything. Do you know, honestly, the girls have to take so much of the weight of a pair more than the men do. The men can, how do I explain it? The girl has to be, in a way, she has to have an it factor. She has to be technically strong. She has to be a good lifter. She has to be a good follower. She has to be a good leader. She has to check all the boxes.
Amy Webster says that the girl has to have sex appeal at the top level. She says that they have to be able to do the tango.
Something about her. There has to be something about the girl. You want to, because your eyes normally follow a girl.
I mean,
not always. Like some teams, I feel like with Papadakis Cicerone, you notice the man as well. But
they need to be able to skate to Duke Ellington out there and really sell it, Renee. We expect a certain kind of flair. Yeah.
But the girl has so many boxes that she has to check. And it's not a 50-50 deal. It's not. The girl has to carry much more weight. And unfortunately, if there are weaknesses, a lot of people are going to point to the girl first.
Would Gorsha agree?
And to quote Dick Button, sometimes I am bamboozled by an ice dance girl who knows how to look beautiful in a lift and hit a beautiful position. But where I am lacking the refinement in my eye is to see some of the dance holds and things like this. I have been a big fan of the Finnish dance team this season because I find their rotational and stationary lifts to be just out of this world. But then what I realize I don't have the eye to see is maybe what's lacking in the actual partnering skills in the blade work. And I wonder the same a little bit about Zingis and Kolesnik because I find them so exciting and I find her so exquisite. But what my eye doesn't know how to look for is some of those sort of ice dance insider things like this is what she has to work on in order to become more cohesive as an ice dance.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
sort
think a
of
lot of
like
people, if you could, yeah, Renee, I just want to piggyback. A lot of people will refer to her as still as a single skater, even coaches, and they'll say the same thing about the finish. So I was wondering if you could explain, you know, that transition from freestyle to ice dance and what the difference is in those
I
terms.
think there's something about the ice dancers when they have grip changes. You'll notice this in pairs a lot too. For example, Katya and Sergey, their grips and holds were seamless. You never saw when they changed a hand over or shifted a grip. It was almost like invisible. And when you see any pair, or especially in dance, when you see transitional steps where you're connected and you see grabbing and touching and you notice it, that's the kind of refinement that the couples who have been together for a very long time do really well. And when you're new to it, you don't understand how arms and things change and go here to here to here, and your grips move without being noticed. It's almost like they're invisible. Your feet move almost like they're invisible, and you're close with each other, and it's like snakes that wind. You don't really see them turning. They move in a certain way. And I think that only comes with time and learning how to be so subtle about those. And you can be sharp about them, but when you notice grabbing, and awkward little moments of little stickiness, that's the biggest difference. And that just comes with a learning curve. That's all. It's not that you're a poor skater. You just haven't learned how to maneuver smoothly yet.
What about like if you're talking about the difference between a single skater and freestyle skater, when we're talking about the 1 foot step sequence and we're talking about, you know, the quality of the edges, those rockers, those counters, what is the difference of the standard of what a clean turn is? I think that would be interesting. Like people could understand that, like a clean rocker and a clean counter that would be called in a freestyle or single skater step sequence has to be at a higher standard in ice dance. So can you kind of talk about, you know, that?
Yeah, you have to look carefully at the edge going in, but especially at the exit edge, because that once the turn has happened, the exit edge coming out tends to be the one they focus on, because that tends to be the dirtier of the turns, not as clean. So, and you have to look at the head and shoulders, because your shoulders will really indicate if you're on a really good edge going in and coming out. So you sometimes can just look at a person's from the waist up. And when you see the shoulders really go from this to this and really completely move, you can pretty much understand that what happens below on the feet will be pretty clean. You have to look, that's why there's always somebody who's assigned to look at the feet, because when you turn and bend and exit, you have to be on a clear circle and edge. And usually your knee bend has to help with that.
How many years does that take typically?
Well, single skaters don't have to make it as obvious as the dancers do. That's why when you see the 1 foot sequence, it tends to be very long and flowing with extra pulls and things, so that it's really clean and obvious. And plus you have to keep your spatial distance between the partners really similar too. And I think that's hard. It's like, you know, it's like two lanes that are loose that are trying to follow each other. So you're just going to see the actual action and knee bend and depth of circle steeper than you normally would with single skater.
Now, what did you make of Zingis and Kolesnik? So in the rhythm dance and in the short programs, US Figure Skating decided to go with world rankings, which probably made sense for the competition as a whole. But in this case, when you're going for world ranking points, you need 3 years of a body of work to really have the maximum points. And Zingis and Kolesnik have not been together that long, so they were at a disadvantage. National scores rise throughout the night, typically, and they were really harmed, you know, not being in that final group, but made a lot of errors in the free skate. You know?
Well, the rhythm dance, I think he missed his twizzle.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rhythm dance, the Michael Jackson, right? Started out terrific. I mean, for me, it just caught my attention, because honestly, I have to say the rhythm dance this year is kind of,
It's been a couple in a row where we feel like the award
Yeah.
for best rhythm dance goes to the best problem solvers given the assignment, you know, and this was certainly an example of that. Yeah.
There were
I'm
so
not
many great
enjoying.
80s songs, but everybody
I'm not
really
enjoying this pick. I'm not enjoying the pick of the 80s theme, and I'm not enjoying the actual compulsory dance within it. This is a tough one for me to get through. I'm having trouble focusing watching so
I
many.
find it through all the programs, even Chock and Bates, as great as they are, I find myself just wanting to get through the rhythm dance to watch their free dance. I just,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't, it's like compulsory for me, but I'm not interested in it, nor do I find their rhythm dance to be necessarily 80s. You know, I don't, you know,
It's a hard theme.
Mhm.
I can't jump on board this theme and the rhythm dance and the
Such a
compulsory.
backfire for the idea that it would be so crowd pleasing, and it is
It's
the
not.
least. Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
like it's not very memorable for me.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like, these
Have they
programs
announced
seem
for
so
next season?
long, huh?
Next year is
What do you mean?
supposed to be like movies,
Oh,
something, and that could go horribly wrong too.
It could go. It could go
Right.
right. It could
Well,
go
I thought
right.
the 80s could go right. I mean, I have a
yeah.
playlist of 80s music from listening to so many, you know, countdowns of top 40. And I, there's so much great music for the 80s, but people didn't, they all went very safe. And especially in the junior teams. I mean, there's a junior at my team that's, you know, doing Footloose. And, you know, that's one thing to see a beginner first year junior team do it. But then I see people at the senior international level doing Footloose. And I think you have to be more original, right? You have to
You have to
spend the
problem solve.
time on music
Yeah.
research.
Yeah, this theme is a tough pill to swallow. I have to say it. I'm not enjoying it a whole lot at all. The programs seem just like they blur together. I don't know. And I know everybody's trying with energy and to give it a look and all of that, but as far as Zynga's program, it's unfortunate that he missed the twizzle. The Michael Jackson had a great start to me, and somewhere in the middle, it was right towards the end of, I think there was a third change of music, and it just sort of got a little messy to me. I wasn't really, everything was so tight and so streamlined and so precise in the first half. And then it kind of, I don't know, it got a little messy. I don't know. I'm not remembering. I
I
don't have
think
a good
his
memory of the
costume
second
even
half.
looks messy going for that Michael Jackson bad era kind of shirt, the white shirt and the chains and whatever's hanging on. It just
Mhm.
looks sloppy to me with the
Mhm.
overall presentation. And I, I think that they looked classy for the free dance. I've never understood why Beauty and the Beast is in red instead of in pink. If you're going to go with such recognizable music that is very Disney, I think you have to
Wasn't
go.
the rose red? I assumed it was something to do with like the
It
rose.
is the rose. I mean, it's the rose in the film is kind of magenta pink-ish,
Yeah.
and they went red instead. Also, Sean Redstadt, head of the ISU, and his husband, you know, influenced those costumes. So playing politics there. I just found it interesting. You know, like I think that they have a lot of potential, but I think that this is a team that needs to really work hard in the off season to make that move, to make a move for the Olympics.
Refinement.
Mhm.
And that just comes with seasoning, really. It just, they're, you know, that's only their second season. They're doing really good stuff. It's just that the refinement, and I sort of feel like they have to find their niche,
Mhm.
you know, Michael Jackson, Beauty and the Beast. You know, I don't know. Maybe they need to find their notes, their
Yeah.
something.
I want to see them. I want to see her get rid of the Idea boots, and I want to see them work on the ballet refinement and extension with their lines. I think that sometimes her free leg is dropped a little low. I want them to match and be up, and because I think in this field, it would really stand out because there are a lot of teams that aren't perfectly matched in
Mhm.
this,
Yeah.
and I think it could really make them look stronger. You know, when I watch Green and Parsons, I do notice that Caroline hunches forward always, and that her lift positions are not extended. And I think that those are areas where if I were a competitor with them, I would be trying to maximize those
Yeah,
areas.
the girl in a lift really has to find, because if you take any lift and you just go with a camera and you go click, 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 and you just take frames of it, the girl right through her legs, her back, her head, and arms has to look really perfect always. And like, for example, like with Zingus's, they have their spinning movement.
Mhm.
The legs just sort of looked, I don't know, kind of,
Dangling.
they could have been in a more pleasing position, I think, you know, where
Mhm.
it's really low. He's got her down by his knees. It's a low spinning element. And you know, it's like that was one moment that I really noticed the picture, and it could have been more beautiful for her. Maybe they were going for more of an abstract look. I don't know. But for me, refinement, because there's real talent there. There really is.
I think of all those sort of like underneath the top groups that are all sort of jockeying for the same thing. I do think they interest me the most. I am most interested to see what they come up with in the off season, and to
They have potential for many things. They have to just find their slot. They have to find their thing. And you know, going back to, they could do something beyond Beauty and the Beast. I think so. They're capable. They're capable of finding a fresh look for themselves. That would be exciting.
How about Green and Parsons? You know, when they were in with Kiliakov, they did have a Prince program, and then they had their modern program that was very
Yeah.
successful 2 years ago.
loved it.
They moved
Loved
to,
that program. Yeah.
I did too. I
Yeah.
did too. They were breaking their own ground. Yeah.
and then we've seen them just fall flat. They had the very safe free dance last year, and this year they tried, right, with this cello music, and yet it still fell flat to me. And the costuming, and it really, I think the choreography emphasizes some weaknesses more than we've seen before. What's your kind of take on where they stand? Because they seem to be at a crossroads and have a lot of talent.
Yeah, I think for me, the music could have been, I can see what they're trying to find their own abstract kind of modern contemporary look, which I admire because they're trying to break their own ground, and maybe that's where they naturally feel themselves. So I can see why they want to pursue that. But I felt like maybe the music needed to have more texture and more interest to it,
Mhm.
because that then could give them moments of finding those interesting things. And I think when the music kind of plateaued and wandered around a little bit, they also got lost a bit. Your music has to dictate kind of where you're taking it, but at the same time, you have to pull things from your music that will help you create pictures and poses and interesting things. And then you need speed on top of all of that,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, the
so.
music. So when we're talking about like
Oh,
Wuthering
okay.
Heights with Piper and Paul, I
Yeah,
don't find that the Wuthering Heights music is strong enough for a winning free dance. I find the actual music to be tepid, where
yeah,
it could have highs and lows. And I do think that
yeah,
Chock and Bates here, because they were sick, the program became like one note for me. There's
yeah.
that section where they kind of like exhale, and it was like ah da 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 da, and they kind of breathe before it gets bigger again. But I think here there was not a big contrast between the opening, the middle, and the end because they were so ill, and they were
Yeah.
so flat all around, and the program
This is
looked
something
weaker.
I find, especially in the U.S. as an outsider to all of it. We were all in Nashville, Dave, for the Olympic trials, that nationals of 2022. And I was randomly at a hotel bar afterwards, after Michael found out he was not going to be on the Olympic team. He was clearly feeling very upset, dejected, all this sort of stuff. I loved that program, but what I wonder in hindsight is they thought that was their crossroads. And then they sort of jumped ship and changed everything. And in my heart of hearts, I was like, no, I kind of wanted you to keep doing more of that and
They
trust
changed
that it would help.
coaches. So
And
when So you change your training atmosphere and you go to new coaches, and now there's a whole new team working and you're trying to find your look and everything. So then everything gets thrown up in the air and it lands, and now you have to put it back together. Yeah.
And
So,
I just,
Ilia
you know, it was a disappointing finish for them, but I think that was the sign of like rock bottom for them. And I was like, no, I wish the material was so good and they were doing so well. I just hoped they had trusted that process and continued. But I know there were another thing.
What happened was Diana and Gleb came to Virginia. According to the skaters there, that the coaches could be in a lesson with Green and Parsons and be looking over here. You know, I mean, at the same time, they left. They had a very cool program that they were working on as a follow-up. The coaches said, you cannot take that program with you. We created that program.
So there's a backstory here. Yeah.
So then they went to Charlie White, and I would say that Charlie and Marie was from Marina. And Charlie in his heyday, people were skating to Gone with the Wind. That's a very Marina Zueva aesthetic that was going on, especially with below the top teams, you know, with the Marina team. That was a very solid aesthetic at the time. And I think that they went a little bit safe, you know, as a coaching staff. So I think that, you know, they're a new staff that has to grow. And I think that's as much as on the coaches of Charlie and Tanith as it is on Green and Parsons. I would like to see more Tanith in these teams, because she actually choreographed programs for some of the junior teams, especially the ones that are competing at the Youth Olympics. I want to call it the Junior Olympics, the Youth Olympics this week. And they have that, you know, the more of an aesthetic that you would think. And I would like to see more of Tanith and what she offered.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think Tanith has a good eye. I think she's kind of looking for new ways and a new looks. And I do. I think, you know, because they're a new team altogether, you know, this is like a new coaching scenario, and it takes a couple of years to sort of get everything down under the belt. And they've got some really nice skaters. And now it's sort of, you know, Montreal kind of went through the same growing pains a little bit. You know, it took them a couple of years, and then they had, you know, Papadakis Zerone come, and then everything just sort of picked up momentum. But it takes a couple of years to sort of get your team and everybody knowing their roles and who has more influence in what areas. And I think Tanith has a really good eye. I do. She's
actually the first person that I ever saw use Inati, Ludovico Inati, in figure skating. She did Primavera for Hannah Miller, I think years back. And that, you know, now an artist that everybody uses in figure skating. So I do think that she has talents that aren't fully utilized. I think the same with Ian Sommerville. I get that they're young, but to me, Prince and Nomikita Pass is expected at this level. And I think that they're capable of doing something much more original, because his talent is abundant. And I know, Renee, you really like this team. I mean, I think he could be the next ice dance star in the United States in 5 years. Yeah.
Those knees, those edges. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Their speed, two of them are so capable. I mean, I know a lot of people make a big deal about Ian and this and that, but you know, for me, Emily is a magnificent skater. She really is. She holds her own. You know, and I know a lot of people complain about, you know, their aesthetic because, you know, of the height, but I'm telling you, these two fly, and she holds her own. She is not dragging him down. And, you know, she's very talented. And I think she sometimes doesn't get the credit for it.
She's going to strong.
She's a great skater. She is.
I find that she's very strong. We talked about that skill ability, right? I think she needs a little bit more of the Madison Chock in the movement and the presenting and in, you know, holding herself in the lifts. But I wanted to talk to you about, is it an advantage or a disadvantage when the female is not the flower? If Ian is the flower, like a Christopher Dean with Jane Torval, is that harder for a team? Is that different? Do judges buy in?
Yeah, you just have to approach it in a certain way, because I think you have to find the strengths And then you have to take those strengths and identify them and really manipulate them to be front and center. You have to disguise the weaknesses and build your strengths. And I think, you know, when I watch Ian and Emily, I watch Ian as much as I do Emily. I do. And I think Emily being, I think she needs, you know, and I think it's coming. I think she needs just a little more confidence, and this could give it to her. She needs to feel confidence. Like, to me, she is like Maria Callas. Everybody was complaining about Maria Callas wasn't beautiful, was overweight, was this and that, but she was such a fabulous talent. And I feel like Emily is like Maria Callas. She can stand there and have just her look and her own statuesque feeling and be confident about it. Kind of like Papadakis too. I think when they first hit the scene, I you know, and I was so upset about it because so many people were saying she needs to get a nose job. She's not so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And I thought to myself, I was watching all these online comments and I thought, oh, don't you dare mess up your face or fix your nose. It is your look. I mean, she has such a look. Another Maria Callas, you know what I mean? Don't mess with it. That's
Does
your
the nose job sometimes help? I mean, it
superpower.
worked for Linda Fradiani, right? Like it worked in that case.
Well, that was because of the deviated septum.
The deviated septum had to go. Yes.
What
Karen
it
could
whips,
as
but,
well.
you know, yeah, I mean, you know, these girls, and again, it's like those comments, they just push your confidence down, and that's the last thing a girl needs.
Well, I think that you talked yourself into a choreography job. I mean, obviously they should be Renee. You just compared it to Maria Callas. I mean, you should be getting called, Renee. I mean, you helped Brandon put his shoulders back, or at least disguise it, so we didn't look at Brandon Fraser's rounded shoulders with Haven Denny and the Lion King. Renee saw that Brandon was a wildebeest, you know, and she was like, "Yes, we will put you in the Lion King."
Lion King. That was their pick, by the way. I was like, "You're doing the Lion King," and they're like, "We love it." And so when a team is just like, "We love this, we are behind this," I have to get behind their enthusiasm. Otherwise, I could sabotage the whole thing.
Who's fierier, like you or Sylvia Fontana? That's a lot of fire and passion.
Sylvia's more emotional.
Okay.
I don't cry that easily. You have to really push me over my last nerve, over the line to make me cry. It takes a lot for me to cry. Well, frustration cry. I can cry at a dog food commercial. Animals.
That's fair. Yeah.
I can cry at like a dog food commercial, but out of frustration, it takes a lot for me to cry. But I'll cry easy tears out of empathy or I don't know, like emotional. Those easy tears. Yeah.
What do you think Green and Parsons should do next? Like, do you think so in ice dance, when another team from the same school passes you, it becomes testy typically in a training environment. Do you think they should stay and allow the competitiveness between the teams to push them? What do you bring in an outside choreographer? Like, what would you advise?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard to get in people's psyche and people's mind because you're always going to have certain events that you get knocked down, and you're going to have certain events where you're ahead and maybe next year behind and whatever. So you know, these two teams are pretty close. Yeah, they do train with each other in a way that's motivating. Look at Gabby and Guillaume and, you know, Tessa and Scott. They had to push each other. They saw each other every day. And it was the same with Meryl and Charlie, actually. Right. They came from the same, you know, under the same roof. So
I just find Caroline shrinking compared to 2 years ago. She had that fire and that confidence in her eye 2 years ago that's missing right now. That extra drive.
But maybe there's outside circumstances going on too. You don't know what's going on with anybody behind closed doors. Does anybody have an injury that they're hiding? Maybe are people having stress from school out? You know, I think she's also in school at the same time. Yes,
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a lot on the plate to kind of manage all those things and not just skate. And that's your only responsibility. You know, who knows what's going on, but I don't know. I think what they have to pick very carefully what they do next year to emphasize their strengths.
Have you ever had a free dance that people didn't like and you had to go and
Oh
change
yeah.
it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And were you
'Cause
glad you did, or did you regret you did in those moments?
It's hard to please everybody. There were many times I skated to things I didn't want to,
Hmm.
but I don't know. You have that double-edged sword, how to please yourself and be politically correct at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah. What do you make of Chock and Bates, where they are? Do you think they're the best in the world? Where do you kind of rank
I
them right
think
now?
they are, if they're
Mhm,
healthy. Yeah,
mhm,
I do. I think they are at this point. I don't see anybody at this moment really pushing them. I think maybe for me, the closest ones to push them are the Italians.
Yeah.
mhm.
For
Why the
me.
Italians and not Piper and Paul? What do you make as the difference?
Um, I prefer the Italians' material this year.
Mhm,
And I believe for me, when I watch them, they are masterful at the effortless, like we were talking about. They're so syncopated. Their transitions are so effortless. When they're on, you just, it goes by really quickly. You don't see any problem. You
mhm.
don't, you just, and I know that maybe they are not the most it factor couple, but what they do is masterful.
Mhm,
Technically, they're pretty amazing.
And I
mhm.
have to say, one of the interesting parts about watching the free dance here at Nationals was how many big errors there were.
Yeah.
I'm used to an occasional whoops in a twizzle or
Yeah.
something like that, but
Yeah.
like the Browns missing the lift and this one missing the twizzle and this one
Yeah.
missing another thing. Like I was not accustomed, like we are so accustomed to in singles and pairs. I was just
True.
not accustomed to the amount of errors we
True.
saw here. I don't
Yeah.
know if that was just like a nerviness or, we've all seen those like single skaters when like someone starts making mistakes in the arena, like it starts infecting all the programs. And there was
Yeah.
almost a bit of
Yeah.
this happening on things that I forget are so difficult. It
Yeah.
never occurred to me that you could miss the blade on a thigh and then not even be able to get
Right. Right. And
it's
it's
like, oh, wow.
devastating. It's devastating because you've done, and like the Browns, you've done a million clean run throughs. Why it happened on that 4 minutes? Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
There's no explanation for it. But you rarely see the Italians step a foot wrong or make a
Right.
mistake. Hardly ever. And it's seamless.
Mhm.
It's just seamless. And their material is difficult, but it doesn't look difficult.
Hmm.
Do you think Chock and Bates are vulnerable um, between now and then? I mean, I think pulling out of four continents was smart because you don't want to go sick to
Yeah.
four continents against Piper and Paul, and they can't afford any errors. They would have to be at their absolute best.
Yeah.
Um, I think they have to skate clean at
Yeah.
Worlds.
Yep. I
Mhm.
think everybody does, because anybody who makes a little error, it's going to become a big deal. Little
But what
errors.
about for the Browns? How you've been in US Nationals before. If you fall out of that top 4 or 5, how hard is it to get momentum going again?
There were reasons for that drop,
Mhm,
Hmm.
technical reasons. It just wasn't a good skate. It
mhm,
doesn't mean that it's over with for the next season or two. It doesn't. You just, and they always put out really solid material.
mhm,
I found Gage really engaging. I
mhm,
do. My eye goes to him so much. He has the capability somehow of paying attention to her and at the same time being able to look out and then get back to her and then present out, and he is so good at the to her and out at the audience or the judges or whatever. He goes back and forth perfectly. He gives
mhm.
attention all the way around. I just felt, I don't know, maybe it was she was just having an off night. I don't know.
I
I
want to
don't.
see more passion from her. I thought here he was really performing. She looked
Mhm.
more within herself. And I
Yeah.
think she's such a strong, competent skater. I want to see her
Mhm.
sell it more. And I think
Yeah.
that she's capable.
Yeah.
They are to really move forward. I think also, I think that the costumes in the rhythm dance looked to me like they were in the Magic Kingdom around 1990. I don't think it was the best look, it just wasn't my thing with the big stars. But that's my opinion. That's just
I mean, we've all had one of those misses, like, oops, we picked a bad oops, the costume we were crying. Yeah. Again, and I think they're spending time now in Montreal.
Mhm.
So they'll get the packaging looking good.
Mhm.
They will.
So,
They'll get that.
Dave, can you remind me? I know that Chock and Bates withdrew from Four Continents. Which of the dance teams now will be at Four Continents?
It will be Zingis and Kolesnik because they
Yeah.
got the call,
That
and
was the last
Carreira.
minute. Yeah,
It'll be
okay.
Carreira and Ponomarenko, and it will be Green and Parsons. So for Green and Parsons, this is a really important skate
Yeah.
because they are not going to the World Championships, which was kind of a quick turnaround by US figure skating, although maybe not a bad decision to really promote Ian if he is, the future. And it gives Green and Parsons that opportunity. They were already, been named to the Four Continents team. And I think for Zingis and Kolesnik, they need to skate better than they did this past weekend. I mean, they need to really kind of.
What a fast turnaround for them, knowing it was unexpected, although maybe they were catching wind that this might be the case with Evan and Maddie choosing to sit it out. I just, Renee, as like a competitor, what would this schedule be like? One weekend in Columbus, Ohio at Nationals, which must
Brutal.
just drain you emotionally, and then a
Brutal.
flight to China, which drains me emotionally, and the time change and this.
It's brutal. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Those poor skaters. Because the US championships, I always felt even before Worlds was the most draining. Oh my God.
I find being at nationals to be draining, even like with what we
is.
do, but like competing and you have to be so on. And what's your
Sucks the
nationals
life
performance
out of
like? If
you.
you're going to run it into a judge in the elevator, Renee, hi, how are you? Right? Like the whole time you're on.
Smile, polite, lovely manners, even if you know that judge is not in your pocket.
Yes.
Else's pocket. Just be polite and just, professional. You just have to, But yeah, that's that's a tough back-to-back. Wow.
And we're assuming this was a broadcasting situation. Is that sort of how this schedule happened this way?
I don't know. See, the thing is, I don't know, was the building not available sooner to give, was it a scheduling thing that building and the arena had something on its schedule that forced the championship to be this late? Everybody else got their nationals out of the way.
Well, typically,
I don't know if it was NBC or something.
Well, they
Could
don't.
be.
I mean, I don't know if it's US Figure Skating or NBC or who makes the decision, but it's probably a smart one that they try to avoid the Super Bowl and the playoffs, right? But then they're also trying to make it, and it depends on what's competing that night and why something happens. I do find it weird that for the last couple of seasons, Saturday night has been the pair final. Like at least maybe put the pairs in the afternoon and the dance for the evening session. Compared like the lineage that we have in the US and ice dance, and I find it a little backwards that I would have at least flipped those two. Knowing that our pairs are the ones that we kind of are not strong in right now. You kind of want to, Phil and Christine would call it the dinner break, right? Pairs would have been the dinner break. And, now ice dance, you want to see who the top teams are. So,
it was a rough week.
I think about the emotional turnaround also, like if you are Green and Parsons, if you are Zingis and Kolesnik, and you feel like you may have something to prove now, is that enough time to sort of like rebound and remotivate and come back with fighter energy? I think that's a big ask. Because we all are looking to them now, just like we just said, we want to see them sort of like right the ship and prove something there. But what a hard time to prove it.
Yeah. The only advantage I can see is that normally when you are neck and neck and neck like that, you tend to get tight because you want it so bad. So you tend to skate a little bit like, I'm going after this, and you tend to get a little bit tight. And that's also when mistakes happen. So when you're exhausted, and you have a travel, sometimes your body just can't get that tight and anxious because You're tired from the week of nationals plus the travel and now having to ramp up again. So that could be an advantage to some people, because I think when you want it so bad with this neck and neck and neck thing, you can get a little tight, and that's when mistakes happen as well.
Would you get tight on tour? Is that something that happens? Like if you're doing 70 cities or you're going to a big city like
it's
New
not.
York?
Being on tour and having back to back to back cities, all in different cities, is not the same as watching your competition stand right next to you. It's not the same.
Who was the biggest competition, Renee, that you would be like that for? Liz and Jared, some of the 80s
Yeah, I think for a while
queens?
there was a rivalry with that. For a while there was a Susie Semenick kind of thing going on too.
You and Susie Wynn rivals?
We were competitors, but no, I never got that feeling from Susie. Susie was just so bubbly and happy, and I was always just so tunnel vision. I didn't want to give my energy to even look over there. I just didn't. I just looked straight ahead. I just kept my face forward. I couldn't even tell you who was on my practices. Couldn't even tell you that. Brian Boitano always jokes with me. He goes, "Don't you remember on that warm up that guy wore that thing and so?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Do you know who was on your own warm ups?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I had tunnel vision."
How did you and Brian become like this?
We were assigned to one of our very first internationals together. It was in The Hague.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never met him. And somehow we were both assigned to that. And we arrived in The Hague for the event. And he and I just took one look at each other and we just started laughing about some things. And we were just, that was it. Like we were bonded almost from on site. We giggled and laughed and just totally got each other. And we were teenagers. So here we are in like our 50s and 60s, and all of this is going on. So 40 years of friendship like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what do you make about the Papadakis and Cizeron potential comeback? Do you think, where do you think their chances are? And do you think it's good for the sport?
Oh, I think they should. And wouldn't it be just so interesting, and what a good story, and what will they bring? I wish they would bring a new look a little bit, because they were so forward thinking, and they brought this whole trend along with them that now a lot of people are doing, this sort of look and the trend of the skating and the storyline and everything. And that's their wheelhouse. And I would love to see them kind of push themselves a little bit. I think it would be awesome.
Just to follow that up. Yeah, I mean, because as we were listening to Evan and excuse me, Maddie talk about will they compete, will they not, they were also sort of indicating this may be one of the last. And so it does seem an interesting timing. Nothing will confuse me more. I mean, obviously there are personal reasons and they are people outside of the sport. But when Zach Donahue and Madison Hubble sort of left, when it seemed like finally everything was going to be available to them, and they decided to leave, I thought, oh, what strange timing. And I wonder that, and Dave, you had a great discussion with Maya and Phil Hirsch this afternoon about it. It seems an unusual time to be considering leaving, unless maybe they're just ready for the next chapter, but they're so close now to Milano. I was wondering if you yourself would have tried to have stuck it out, or if they just must be so tired that they're like, we've got to finish this.
I think if it were me personally, I think, they just became world champions last year. They could probably repeat this year, hopefully. And then I think if I had,
they became team world or team Olympic gold medalists.
Yeah. And I think for me, that would be enough.
Okay.
That would be enough. I have my Olympic, well, that was the best news of today, the team event. I think I don't know. I'm not them. I'm not in their heads. I don't know if they want to move on with their lives. And, who knows if his back and groin and everything, like, is everything healthy and in place to keep going? But I don't know. I think you have to
Business-wise.
just see what you're ready, like what makes sense for you. Everybody's different, but I think I would probably move on.
It would be enough.
I think it
Not
would be
this
enough.
outlying possibility of an individual medal.
Pining for it. No, I have to be on the podium. I don't know if I would be pining. They've just shown so much in their careers. They've put out such beautiful material. They've tried. They've shown their cards in so many artistic ways. They've done everything. They've done
Well, it's
it all,
also,
really.
rumored to be Piper and Paul's last season, but then things change, emotions change. What someone said in September is not the same thing that's true in November or February, right? So, but I would look at it from a business perspective. They have 2 years left in their careers.
Are you talking about Piper and Paul?
Both Piper and
Both,
Paul
okay.
and Madison, the reality is that every time you're on TV, you get more Instagram followers, right? Especially at an Olympics. And I think that both teams are going to be getting a lot of press because they're going to be Olympic medal winners, right? Canada hasn't really started celebrating that team bronze yet, but that will happen, right? Which will make Piper and Paul Olympic medalists. You'll get some notoriety for that. You'll get in the press, you'll get in the papers. And I think that sometimes you have to ride momentum because there are only so many slots in these shows. And Papadakis and Cizeron do get a lot of them. So it depends if Papadakis and Cizeron are still going to get that ice dance slot in Japan. It may make sense for Madison and Evan to keep competing because it builds their brand, right? I think that that's kind of, was there only one ice dance slot on Stars on Ice when you were in it, Renee?
There weren't, I don't think they slotted. It was just like, we like them, we'll take them. We were short for a while on pairs, we were the dance team, and Chris and Jane for a while were with us on Stars, and then they left, and then we had Bechki Petrov for pairs and Jenny and Todd for pairs. And, so it shifted, but there were some dry years for pairs there for a while. And I think the audience wants to see couples. It's a pair of dance because it's like single, single, single. Okay, now your eye is looking for a pair to go do something.
Right.
Dancer or pair, it doesn't matter. But I think a lot of, I think everyone's waiting to see what Gabby and Guillaume decide to do. Because I think that's going to make a big difference to what everybody else decides to do.
And you have told me repeatedly that you think that Leah Nessa and Artem Markelov are the future. So do you want to?
I do. They're the junior. They won everything. I think they're undefeated this year in juniors, correct?
And it's their third time winning junior at nationals.
Yeah. And for me, like, I look at them and they get level 4 on everything. They are handsome, attractive couple, tall, beautiful bodies, both talent, good, equal talent. They've been together for a couple of years, just getting, all those years in juniors building up. Their scores are like 20 something points ahead of anyone who's behind them in second. They have a great look too. They're talented and they are clean. I think, coming up from juniors, if they stay healthy and they stay together, I think they're going to be a big deal.
What do you make of solo dance and the rise of that? Do you think we'll see solo dancers then get partners or switch back and forth? What do you?
Yeah. I don't know. Are there that many partners out there to be had?
I don't know. I think it depends on who's looking, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of women who are in the solo dance. Are there that many men to keep up with all the women to pair up? Not that many that I've seen.
Like McNamara and Spiridonov split up before nationals. I mean, those would be two skaters that I think would be looking for partners right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We'll see.
I still think if they can get Avonlea Nguyen to come back, she's the one skater that could change the whole.
She was beautiful. She was a beautiful skater. Yeah.
What happened with her? Where is she?
She's I think planning on medical school or in school right now, but we need to pull her back in just for a couple years. It's just, Renee, how did you get convinced to go back into competition, Renee? Did you want to go back or?
No.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Do you regret that decision?
You barely
Renee?
got the sentence out before I answered. No, I really didn't. You know, Gorsh and I had done a little bit of professional skating, and then the rules changed and opened the door for you to come back. And he was all about it, and I was not. And I was like, that one time, it made me cry. I did cry.
At the thought of having to.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But I love that fluff piece where you got matching haircuts. I mean, that was fabulous, Renee. The attention to
What was that,
detail.
in the 90s?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't want to. In retrospect, it turned out to be the right decision. I was very reluctant, and I went crying all the way. But he was right. Gorsha was right. He was he was right.
Do the two of you still argue and debate to this day? I mean, that was the whole
We
fun.
don't argue as much as we used to, not nearly. We get along fine now that we don't have to skate together. But yeah, there was, you know, I always said that, you know, when he decided to become an attorney, because he said, I just really feel it. I want to get my point across, and I want to argue for my position. And I'm like, you got all your arguing skills off of me.
Are you on commission? Yeah.
Yes, because I don't argue for the sake of arguing. I only want to get into it if I have a real clear point to get across and I feel strongly about it. And so it was like this all the time. And, you know, it was war every day when we were training, but, you know, he got his arguing skills really honed because of me.
And now he's a professional.
Yes.
What were you arguing about? Like,
Oh,
what?
God. Everything. Just, yeah. I mean, well, I'll tell you this. The one thing that we were really on the same lane on was our artistic vision. We wanted to break the mold. We want to be creative. We really didn't want to go for the typical ice dancing thing, which was in favor at the time. And it was not very comfortable on us. It was like wearing a shirt that didn't fit. So we had to follow the rules, and there was no vocal skating, and you had to only have a lift up till here. And just, we wanted to be free and try and break new molds and do new things. And it just, plus the fact that he was a Russian defector and entering into trying to compete for another country, and that hadn't been done before. And that was very stressful because there were so many people, some were for and many were against that. Now nobody even thinks about it because.
And he did defect with Igor Spielband, who's coaching Zingis and Kolesnik. And then, of course, Igor Spielband's team did have a letter writing campaign against you to deny citizenship before the 94 Olympics, because this is ice dance. And we, you know, love a little bit of drama.
So it was a whole thing, and it was really stressful at the time. And, you know, I don't know. I think we finally found our footing when we turned professional and we're free.
Why did you decide to turn pro? Like, what was the defining moment for you?
We just didn't see how we could move forward. We just couldn't see a path forward.
Yeah.
Would you have enjoyed competing under this system?
Probably. A little bit more open.
Well,
it's hard to say because the technical things are now so much more rigid. I would have had to have become a much, much, much stronger skater. Yeah. Gorsha was technically really strong. I was always playing catch up, always, always.
Well, that's interesting because you famously said in one of your fluff pieces that if you skated like a Russian, it would be all arms and skating on flats. So can you discuss what you meant by that, Renee?
But I think because I came from, you know, we worked sort of the British school. We had compulsories to do at the time. Compulsories, and then your original dance, and then your free dance. So there were 3 aspects. And your compulsories, we worked with Betty Calloway, which every edge and tuck and everything was clean, clean, clean. And Gorsha had some real things to clean up because the Russians were not technically super proficient at clean edges and clean feet. They were very artistic and elaborate with the expression, but the feet weren't clean. So he had some stuff to do with that. But I just feel like with the twizzle side by side and the 1 foot sequence and, you know, the side by side steps where there's no touch and all of that. I mean, I would have had to kick it up way a notch. I didn't have trouble with lifts.
Mhm.
And I think my spins would probably, pair spins would have been fine. But yeah, I would have really had to like pick it up.
Mm. Yeah. Do you miss the compulsory dance being a part of it? Do you think the skating is stronger or weaker? Do you notice a difference?
I think the compulsories have a place, just like figures did.
Mhm.
But I don't miss having to do 3 patterns of the Yankee polka.
Thank you, Ron Ludington.
Yeah.
Or 3 patterns of the Starlight or Tango Romantica, whatever it was. It was, you know, and it took up a lot of time, and it took up a lot of time at competitions, and it took a lot of training time up. So I don't mind that it's combined, but you know, pick really good, interesting themes.
Not
What would a good theme be that you would enjoy?
I don't know. I would have to really think about it, but the 80s just wasn't it for
yeah,
I'd
I
like to
could
see
never
Renee
imagine.
Roca doing some salsa or something. I feel like you could give us a little flavor, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I miss those original dance themes. Those were some of my favorite moments, and especially in the 80s and 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. This year it's a miss in the rhythm dance, and I was so excited for it.
Yeah, it seemed like it could have become something, and then it just didn't really quite get there.
Yeah. Were there any other moments as we wrap up from nationals that stood out to you?
I'm looking at my notes.
She's professional.
I do, because I was watching and writing. I tend to get so swept up when I'm watching and so swept into whatever is happening.
Paul tried to claim that you were more serious than he was, and then when you pushed back, he was like, "Oh, well, maybe, yeah."
Paul called me serious. That's really interesting. Paul was very intense on tour.
You don't say.
If he didn't have a good night on his skate on tour, he was not happy. Yeah. And you knew it. Like if he had a bad night, it was like the storm coming through. Yeah, you knew it. It's interesting that he said I was serious. I took my job really seriously. I did. I wanted to be so perfect, and I wanted to be so professional, and I took it really seriously. Like to me, that was a job that I cherished, and I didn't want to hinder or I cherished those days. I really did.
When you watch those shows, it looked like everybody took it seriously in a way that is not done in the shows
Some
now.
more than others.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, Gorsha certainly had a great time, but you know, when you go on tour, you're always going to have the party people. You always are. And like, I was just not that girl. I was the girl that was like totally serious. Like I tried to do everything I was supposed to and show up on time. And yeah, I was like, you know, I was that goody two shoes.
I mean, you had Christy Yamaguchi doing all those triples every night, all those triple S's.
Christy, yeah. Like I have to say the women on tour for the most part were so stable, so on it. We were the glue. We really were.
Listen, Renee has let us know that the women were the glue of Stars on Ice, and they had the harder job in the ice dance partnership.
And I believe her on both accounts. Yeah.
Yes.
100% I do. Yeah.
I'm telling you, these para girls and the ice dancer girls, they have to check way more boxes than the boys, I think. I really think they do.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. We still quote you because last year you said, what was the theme there? What was the theme? Well, Allison Reed, now a European bronze medalist, so congratulations to her. But I will always remember Renee go, what was the theme? I was confused. Yes.
Sometimes I don't get it. Yeah, I try to get it. I try to really understand everything, but
One
sometimes
wants to get it. Yeah.
Sometimes I don't get it.
I feel that way with the Wuthering Heights program. I want to get it. I enjoy the novel. I'm not seeing it in the free dance, but that's okay. That's, maybe I didn't need to.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, for the next 2 competitions and at Worlds especially. And if Papadakis Cicerone come back, we'll just wait and see, because that's just gonna mix everything up.
Yeah.
I will say, I want to see them do more experimental things. I thought for the Olympic year that their rhythm dance was the gold medal moment lacking.
Yeah.
And I thought they need more of that. And that's why
Yeah.
I think it's important that they come back. And they did take some risks in the rhythm dance. Even the Fame one was rather strong. So I think that they can, have really iconic images. But I think for the free dance, they have to get creative. So
Question, do you call them the Canadians or the
the
Canadians?
Canadians, yes.
What happens with this?
They're going to the 4 continents this week.
Okay.
And then they're still listed for Worlds. So
Okay.
I think we shall watch and see what happens. But yeah.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, watch and see.
yeah.
Wow.
You know what? I think that, who I'd want to be right now? The British team. And do you know what I would do? I would bring Tessa Virtue to the World Championships. Just have her stand around, full glam. It matters in the stands.
Yeah.
And if I were Anthony Ponomarenko, I would start bringing his parents to the competitions and have
I'm surprised he
Anthony
doesn't play that card more, and maybe that's a part of it. It's not to play that card, or maybe he doesn't want to, or they don't want to. But I think there's
I
something
think Marina, his mother, gets extremely nervous to the point where she almost is going to pass out. And I think you feel that energy when your parent is in the crowd. You feel their anxiety, and that's not what you need.
No.
There's studies about that's true. And if you read Dorothy Hamill's book, she talks about her mom always being super anxious, and her mom stayed in the hotel during the competition. But there is that theory that if you have a very temperamental parent,
just worried sick in the stands and in the building, that energy finds you. It's the same thing with your coach. If your coach is just beside themselves with the hand wringing and the nerve, like, you feel that. You just feel it. This is your circle. This is your group, whether it's your parents, your coach, your partner, whatever it is, you feel it. And you need to be you have to be in your own realm and not have that outside stuff affect you.
Was your mother a nervous one?
Huh?
Was your mother nervous?
No, my parents were just, I'm just like, please don't come. Just, I'll call you. You'll get a phone call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get a phone call. Let me do my thing. If you're going to show up in town, I'll see you at the end. Just be in a different hotel. If you show up, just don't let me know you're here in town, and I'll see you at the end. You can let me know then. Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
It worked for you. Yeah. I mean, Nastya Lukin won the gold medal. Her mother was walking around in Beijing touring.
So many mothers do. They have to, or parents do. They have to get up and they have to walk away. They cannot watch. They can't. It's just, it's too hard.
In the late 90s, in the year 2000, there was a gymnast, Vanessa Atler, who was a rising star at the time, trying to make the Olympics, and NBC always focused on her because she was so marketable. But she had a problem with the uneven bars, and they would always go. They would show her mother in the stands, show her in the bars. Like, they would flip back and forth. But yet again, you talk about feeling that energy. So
yeah.
Well, then that makes sense why he doesn't have his mom around.
If you really want to help your child, this goes for singles, for everything. If you really want to help your child, you have to let them make the decision about what they want. You don't tell them, I'm going to be there, and you have to honor what your kid needs to skate well and perform the way they need to. And too many parents insert themselves and gets in. I don't know. I think it's hard. I think it's hard to tell your parent to step back.
But I do think that skater needs to drive it. The skater has to be the one who wants it. And it ultimately always comes out when it's really the parent driving it.
Yeah. And the parent sometimes just doesn't care and says, I'm doing what I'm doing. You deal with it. Yeah. It happens way more often than you realize, but
Thank you so much, Renee. Your insight is fabulous as always. Yes.
Okay. You guys have a good week.
Yes.
You too.
All right. Till next time. Bye.
Well, Jonathan, the Valyeva case did break today. So should we?
I didn't know it. No, I'm just kidding. It's always fascinating to me when a story sort of breaks outside of our skating circle. This one definitely did. It has not been. I don't think it's been the story it could have been, and a lot of people forgot it was a thing. And then, sure enough, and I can't imagine what your situation was, I started getting a flurry of texts and all these sorts of things like, oh gosh, what does this mean? Like, da 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 da. Did any of it surprise you?
I've always thought that it would be 2 years. So the 4 years did surprise me just about these organizations. But I'm really waiting, I think, as Phil said, for when, the reasoned decision comes out. But in my opinion, having Shvetsky maintain such a position of prominence and the fact that the Russians haven't publicly questioned Shvetsky, Tudbaritsa, any of the people that would have been responsible for this, and instead have come up with more excuses. Now they're saying a desert as opposed to me, as a judge, I would find that insulting. And as a judge, I would not be, you know, likely to rule leniently because it feels that when someone gives an excuse like that, that's so implausible with someone thousands of miles away, right? That in a country that has state-sponsored system and a history of doping, I would think that they're thumbing their nose at the system. And again, that's not Valyeva's fault, but she is a part of the
She took the
system
fall, didn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt the prediction has been that she would take the fall. So in that sense, I hope that if they're going to silence her, well, I hope she's really paid well for the rest of her life to shut up, if that's what this is, right? Because I tried to bring this up to Maya and people get so touched, but listen, that, Rodchenkov in his book talks about certain athletes being thrown to the wolves. And I have to think about your girl, Maria Sotskova, who tested positive for furosemide, a weight loss drug, and they decided to throw the book at her for 10 years. She can't do shows or coach in Russia, right? To me, I would wonder if that's a sacrificial lamb to make Rusada look tough on doping, because Rodchenkov talks about this practice in his book. So then to protect someone like Valyeva, who's of a higher and who knows the political ramifications, right? I would really recommend reading his book. It's called The Rodchenkov Affair. It's holding up my computer right now. He also talks about having, that if someone is going to dope, they would prefer to have a liquid or a cream or a gas because it absorbs quicker and it works more effectively than a capsule, which you don't know if the capsule is going to dissolve. But to me, that makes the trace amount more damning. Right? Like if you took a pill by accident, that would be a full dose of something.
Right.
But if you took a trace amount, that can mean that you're trying to be under the detectable limit for something.
Right. It may not mean you shared a dessert.
No, it may mean that this was a very calculated decision by a doctor. And I go back to Slava Zagrudniak, who was covering the 2018 Olympics with us, and or 2022 Olympics with us, and I will remember when he said it, and my mouth dropped.
We both just sat there silent, which is rare for us.
We knew what he was saying more than he knew what he was saying, because he said that Dudikov was monitoring the weight of athletes back at the rink. And my opinion was, what, they couldn't have a coach call them fat there? That made me think, is this a calculation for a performance enhancing drug for a dosing? And that is why the weight has to be so monitored. That's what I would question. I'm not saying it happened, but I'm saying that is my question, right? Yeah.
Two things sort of perplexed me about this is one, so they announced the decision, but then at a later date, we'll give you more information. That seemed, I was surprised it's not just sort of one, like, here's our decision, here's the info about it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, again, they had set a time that this was going to be released and it leaked earlier, right? But my understanding about that is that there are a lot of decisions coming out, and I'm not sure if they do that as a customary practice. Because if they know that all of these verdicts are coming out in all of these several trials, because remember, they were handling not just the Valyeva trial, right? I imagine that you may not want to be inundated by all of the press and all of the report. I mean, it has to be a circus for them, because think about, okay, figure skating has a hot mess. What other hot mess do they have in their case? Right?
Yeah, almost exclusively hot messes. Yeah.
I mean, in the kind of things that they're dealing with. So it may be a reason of the court. I don't know, but I don't know if it's a nefarious or sinister reason, that it's just more of a procedural that, we don't understand. And I think, that's why I wanted to have Phil on, is because he's covered so many different sports. And the one thing about figure skating that's different is that sometimes we don't treat our skaters as athletes because they are young, because they are more emotional with music, because they are more artistic. We are sometimes more willing to play into the empathy, right? And not look at the rules and what's fair for everyone and be like, well, this is a 15-year-old, but you have to think about all of the other athletes who are competing and what's fair for them as well. And
I
that's
just
what
never understood the idea that, oh, she's of a certain age, ergo she can do whatever she wants with no ramifications. And if that was the case, and it's like, oh, this is a 15-year-old who cannot be held responsible, then who is? And that was sort of what was missing from that logic. It's like, oh, she's so young, you can't hold her accountable. And it was like, well, then give us the name of who should be held accountable.
I agree there, right? And those people should be held accountable and should be punished. And people leave comments that they should be punished, and yes, they should. I don't know about the way to do that, and I don't know that I would trust the Russians to do. I mean, the ISU would have to be tougher on Russia than they ever have. This again is kind of forcing the hand of the ISU, and the ISU will be able to say, "Well, we had to follow what CAS did." But I think there is a set. I mean, look at how Canada and Japan have never made strong statements about this. And I talked to one athlete who asked, Skate Canada if they were going to go after the team gold for Sochi when those things came out, and that was a decision. There is a feeling in the ISU that Russia is powerful, Russia could be back, and you don't want to upset Russia based on the power that they had. And I don't think it would take that long for Russia to become powerful in the ISU again. I think it would take maybe a couple of years, but I think they would immediately change the game if they came back in and the politics that we see now. I think ultimately the sport without Russia does lose some of its dynamic characters. I also wonder now if it's just too dark with what's going on in the world, right? And the doping and the Trusova and and all of the other sports, right? And with the war and everything in Ukraine, and and you thinking about Kolesnik, who's competing when his childhood home is blown up, and you start to think like this is very real for a lot of people. And I don't think that Russia has done themselves any favors announcing them all as Olympic champions, allowing Valyeva to compete for the last 2 years, basically thumbing their nose at this decision. They're going to have an alternate Olympics. And yes, their athletes should be allowed to have opportunities to compete. However, it feels like Russia is using this as internal propaganda. And I think that we have to be really cognizant of that and understand that Valyeva has already been a symbol of propaganda within Russia for the last
immediately. Yeah.
What American would be if a 15-year-old American skater tested positive for a drug, whether given to her or not, whether given to her by a parent, a shady doctor, anyone, the news media would be asking questions.
Yeah, they'd go right after it. Yeah.
You would not see a 30-foot mural of her in Times Square.
Yeah. To say this is our symbol of our oppression as a nation.
Yeah, and that everybody hates America and all of it. It has just not done them any favors. But again, I wouldn't go based on their words today, what they're going to do, as opposed to but they are planning an alternate Olympics, and their decision, what they do with Valyeva, will determine whether or not they'll ever be back in international sport. I think with having an alternate Olympics, I mean, it is very real with the laws that are happening. I mean, I talked to someone in the Russian media, they can't even talk about Amber Glenn the way that they would used to, because if you talk about someone being gay in certain respects, it could be immediate criminal charges in Russia. So things have just really clamped down there over the last years. There's a feeling of certain teams not wanting to go back to Russia, who don't train in Russia because of maybe military service or whatnot. So I think, that society is really changing quite rapidly. And the fact that they have seemed to disregard all of the rules, have not seemed to take this seriously, have not really pushed for an investigation, and that no one is pushing them to do it, even internally. I don't think that it speaks well to the rest of the world that they would ever change anything that they've done with doping. I mean, what do you think there?
Well, the other part that intrigued me was this decision of a 4-year suspension, I assumed meant she cannot compete at any ISU sanctioned international event.
Mhm.
What was fascinating to me is, so now she can't compete in the domestic events?
Apparently not.
That was the part that because I was curious, like, but if Russia was like, yeah, we're not international now anyway, let's let her keep skating. But it sounded like now the risk of shows that were state sponsored, which I think are most of them, and the competitions that are domestic that are state sponsored, that it has taken her out of those. That part confused me a bit. If
Mhm.
like this organization said, okay, she's suspended, I would assume it's only internationally, but I guess not.
It depends if they want her to continue as a symbol. Because you imagine if they move the Russian championships for 2026, let's say that it's 4 years from December 25th. Now, people have, speculated this fantasy of her coming back and competing. What if they move the Russian nationals to start December 26th, right? So that she could
Yeah,
participate.
the suspension, yeah.
Please do this. Please do this. We need it. Okay. We need
Yeah.
Valieva to return to competition and Christine Brennan to be there to cover it. I mean, and Chock and Bates to be there in the same competition. Okay.
Yeah.
This could be great.
But I was intrigued that a cast decision could determine domestic events as well. Like
Well,
when Tanya
Russia's not permanently kicked out of the ISU. They're just not invited to competitions right now. Right. So I think it's this weird area where if Russia wants to remain compliant with WADA and the IOC and the ISU, they kind of have to play ball with that verdict. But I think that's why we're going to see, is Russia going to play ball with this? Or is this the moment where Russia says, you're not going to let us at the Olympics, right? We're moving on. And
because who back in the day officially banned Tanya Harding from the sport?
US figure skating, but it was after. And it was a plea deal, right? So, and that happened after the Olympics because she had better.
It was not ISU, it was not an international thing. Because then I remember there were all those rumors at the time, is would she go represent a different country? Because again, it was like, okay, well, now you won't let her compete within the US, but it didn't mean she couldn't compete internationally. She was representing a different country. But so I guess that was because it inevitably came from the USFS.
Yeah. I wonder if they would have let her go if she asked for a release.
Yeah.
If you're kicked out, do you still have to wait for a release? These
Yeah.
are interesting rules.
Okay.
I mean, Tanya didn't really love training so much, so I don't know how that would have gone.
She was in any danger of wanting to come back anyway, but it was.
But I mean, certainly professionally, and today there's no standards. I mean, think about it. Tanya was disgraced for what she did. Today, people who do what Tanya did or didn't do, they are invited on Dancing with the Stars right after for ratings, right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Society has just changed so much since then, for better or worse, and it's just different. I also think the film about her is an interesting take. It's one artistic interpretation.
One take. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also a phenomenal athlete, one of the best jumpers of all time, and
Tanzania. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a confusing person, and I don't know there. That's a tough one. That's one for Renee.
Yeah.
I was asking someone, I was asking a former skater, I said, like, do you think she knew? And, her handwriting was on stuff. It's tough because that phone number written down and some of the planning makes that tougher, right? To defend, right? That piece of paper. So, yeah, we'll have to see there. What do you make of, I asked Tara Kane, I said, what do you say about US pairs? Because listen, in years past, if I remember, covering pairs and having several pair teams or pair girls message us if they didn't like our opinions over the years, but this was one of the weakest pair competitions I've ever seen at a senior level, not just at a nationals, but in any competition ever. With the side-by-side doubles. And I get that there are a lot of new teams, but it also just seemed like there's a lack of skaters in the US with really strong skating skills. The pair program is in a flux, right? And I do think that the scores for Ellie and Danny were very inflated because her jumps were not called under. But you could argue that would it be worse if the US didn't send a national champion to Worlds because of citizenship issues, representation issues, releases? Does it look weaker? Does it look worse? Does that stuff matter anymore? Right?
I don't know I mean, if you are, I think they all finish about the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a crapshoot any day. But what I mean is, does it matter if someone has the title of national champion as much? Because, okay, 20 years ago, in the US, we get to see the ABC broadcast. But there was no guarantee that they saw it in England or Latvia or Russia, right? So that person going to that competition, having that title adds prestige. Well, we all saw all of the programs at nationals. So now it's like everybody has YouTube, right? So if someone could watch Danny and Ellie in that performance and like, I don't care that you won US nationals, you skated like that, right?
I don't think it gives them any advantage going in as national champions with that skate.
It's like
I don't
an
think
old school thinking. Yeah. And I think what's worrying to me is it's 2 years. I mean, not a full 2 years they've been together, but almost a full 2 years. Second year at nationals, they do have experience. They do look more refined, and they have been working with Bruno. I think moving to Bruno full time would be a really wise decision that US figure skating should try to push.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that she would be more open to it. Danny runs a house in Colorado. He coaches. He's moved for skating countless times. But I noticed that he is not as confident when he skates. And I went back to watch some of his performances with Tara Kane, and he moved so well in his body. And yes, he has gotten more muscular, but he just looks tense and stiff when he's skating with her because I don't think he can relax and trust her. Like
I don't think he trusts. Yeah.
It has not gelled yet. And he actually tried out with Ashley Kane, and the size difference didn't work there. I just think when you have such a difference in experience between Danny O'Shea and someone brand new, we've seen this so many times, and I don't think it often ends well, right? When one person is so much more experienced than the other.
When it's basically, I would imagine it feels like your partner is your coach.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And I think it must create such a different dynamic.
Yeah. I don't know. But I mean, listen, they have a lot of strengths. They have strengths. Okay. The other teams do as well. I kind of feel like Elisa and Misha have more potential. And Katie McBeath was skating well in practice before her blade broke. And I don't think that they're 100% just yet. And there are a lot of missed levels from some of the California teams that are just like a little sloppiness. But we were talking to Renee about, all of the, it's a new coaching team that they have essentially, no Chris Knierim, Todd is not there. They're still growing and adjusting. It kind of reminds me of Three's Company. It's like you lost Chris Knierim, you put in Brandon, right? You lost Suzanne Summers, you put in another blonde. But, Brandon leaves for tours. He's also in school. His commitment are different than other people have had in the past. Chris was a full-time coach at that point in time. So, and I think people say Brandon's great, but he does do other things, right? So they have to figure that out. And I think Nate is working with the younger teams. So, just growing pains, I think, in that camp in general, plus a lot of new teams. Kind of weird for the new teams to be the second year of the quad as opposed to the first, but Lexa and Brandon continued last year. I thought Emily and Spencer looked good.
Yeah, what happened? I obviously saw they withdrew. I didn't see the reason.
Okay, so the real reason is that he had shoulder surgery. It didn't work. They had to redo it. And then he's had frozen shoulder. So in talking to Olga, they haven't been able to practice lifts. I mean, they didn't even try lifts until maybe 3 weeks before nationals. Ooh. And, they just haven't had the mileage to do 3 lifts in a long program. And I think they knew that they were going to only do the short.
Okay.
I imagine that was a discussion with Justin Dillon on what do we do and how do we, and they perform well in the short. So now they have to get ready for Worlds and hopefully they can. But I could see a situation where they go to Worlds and do well. I could see a situation where they have to withdraw, right?
Yeah.
And for them right now, they are so strong. I hope that they can make a full recovery because they are a
Yes.
good team that could be in the top 10 at Worlds. But you have to remember, we have 3 spots for Worlds because Alexa and Brandon are world champions.
Or second last year, right?
Second last year, sorry. World champions the year before, second last year, and they did win in Japan right after. You're correct. Yeah, just that's a tough one. And Balaj and Chelsea, she was struggling in the practices all week. She's continually struggled. I don't know there if that's moving forward.
How aren't their friends, either side by side or throw? I mean, that was showing up for them in this.
She's also had so many concussions, like an unreal number of concussions. So I mean, she's been through a lot as a skater.
Yeah. And just thinking back, could you imagine as a pair skater going through all of that surgery on your shoulder only to be like, just kidding, you have to do it again? It didn't work. That's horrible.
That happened with a gymnast at UCLA, Peng Lee, who had an ACL, and they took like a ligament from a cadaver, and it didn't she had to redo it, and that's like a 9-month recovery. So and the shoulder is complicated as well. It's a very complicated joint.
Trauma of the whole thing, and then for it to have not worked, just terrible. We were seeing those pictures of Matteo Rizzo out of surgery. I hope his worked. Like just even seeing him in the recovery, you're like, oh, right. I'm just like, oh, yeah. And then they had to have a surgery. But then when you really think about what they have to go through, what a nightmare.
And some people's shoulders, I remember like the gymnast Blaine Wilson, I mean, he was doing the still rings, right? But his problem was he had like a torn labrum in his shoulder and it was always giving him problems, like over and over and over again. And then certain people have had shoulder problems and back problems as, pair guys. I think it's kind of a common injury, but yeah, very complicated. So yeah, I don't know. The rest of the pairs were just not ready for prime time.
Yeah.
That's another discipline where I would start to ask them to be filming shorts and longs and setting them every week, not because they're not training, but I would use the competition within the national team to kind of motivate everyone to kind of raise the level of performance because they need to raise the game and develop. And I think tracking it and having a leaderboard and saying, the top 5-6 teams send in a short and a long every 2 weeks or every week, right? And be like, and Lori Parker and Dana Graham are going to judge. And then we are going to add them to the different scores from week to week to week to week, and we are going to rank you.
Yeah.
When you talk about body of work, I would consider that as one of the spots, right? Maybe one of the spots on a world team could go to whoever is ranked the highest. And I would look at it and doing it in the men's and really in the women's as well to maintain consistency because we have a lot of skaters who struggle in that area. And also to point out potential problems with the rotations of the jumps so that you're not solely relying on one caller at nationals who has all of the power for the year.
Right. Agreed. I mean, it was interesting. I was just trying to again, we chatted, in the show why we chose not to go individually to Columbus. It did look like it was nicely attended. They had some nice camera work, things were happening. And it seemed to attract a lot of people I knew that were around the Columbus area who aren't skating fans. And that was really nice to hear. A lot of opera people I know just came out of the woodwork and they were like, oh, we found these tickets. We hear this is in town. We're going to check it out. And I was like, that's what you want to be happening everywhere. But man, was it an error-filled nationals? Even though we keep saying there were these breakout performances in the big moment, really all things considered, this was a nationals that was really marred by a lot of mistakes.
It was. I do think that the well-attended crowds change the perception of nationals. I got a call from someone that I worked with as a vendor who was a TV producer, and they were like, wow, I'm blown away by nationals. Having that crowd is so important. And that's what was missing last year and at Canadian Nationals. And you never want to feel embarrassed as a viewer that you're watching skating. You don't want to feel like the party has ended. And because the fact that they had a good crowd made a huge difference.
Yeah. If that had been in a sparsely attended sort of arena and those performances happened, it would have been, I think, more of a devastating nationals. Yeah.
And it does prepare the athletes better for the Worlds when they have a big crowd.
Yeah.
Or competing in Japan when they have a big crowd. I mean,
Europeans showed us that where I started to get excited by programs I had seen all season.
Yeah.
And they had sort of gotten me excited. And then with the full crowd, I was like, aha, that's what was missing.
You know, I thought Ilia Malinin was really growing. In the beginning of his program, his first 2 quads, watch how he interacts with the audience and how they respond to him and he gets energy from it.
Yes.
Unfortunately for Ilia Malinin, he has so much ability, so much swagger, but at nationals, when it's been his time to win, he has not had that slam dunk moment. And the thing I will say about Nathan Chen is he often did. Nathan, think about how many times Nathan just laid it down at nationals.
And then it's easy to promote. It's easy for NBC to like throw up that program onto whatever, and then everyone's watching that amazing moment. You can't really do that with any of the winners here.
You can't, because when the performance goes as awry as his last 2 free skates have, you can't then clip the quad axel and clip the celebration. You need the celebration to match, and it didn't, right? And that's the disappointment there. But he was phenomenal, and I don't think that there's a question about his ability. But one thing I will say is I do really believe he needs Raphael as a coach, and this is why. Because he, I was talking to Ari and I checked in to see how he's doing, ahead of time and things like that. And then hearing after the competition, well, he just changed his boots right before. This is nationals. You plan when you're changing your boots around Worlds, Skate America, nationals. Okay. When you're a skater at that level, you time everything. To switch right before, unless it broke, right? Is that a really wise strategic move, right? Not knowing that. And I think that's where you have a coach with more experience that does it. He was also dressed like Alexei Urmanov in 1996, 1997 in that free. He looked like a Mishin skater in the tackiest way. He does need to do ballet over the summer to keep working because his lines are not extended. He got components that were nationals components for a reigning king, but maybe not. I think he still has room to grow in these areas. I think the short is stronger than the free.
Where does Shaylin live?
California, I believe. Yeah.
Near Raphael?
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, then it seems pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, but imagine if you're his skaters and you didn't even represent Russia. You were Russian, but you represented, right, Uzbekistan. And then you've been toiling, but now that they have Ilia, this is their chance to get other students in the kiss and cry.
Well, they certainly did a beautiful job with
Everhardt.
Yeah, her jumping was sensational. Yeah. So maybe there is something there, but again, that's great for her. But they're trying to win a world title with Ilia and sort of like keep breaking history books and all this sort of stuff.
I think that their strategy is like, well, we're landing all the points. He will eventually win. Why does he need to go to Raphael? But I kind of think it's skating, it's showmanship, it's politics, having the right person at the boards matters. And I think that they need a mastermind because at the end of the day, I don't look at this season. I'm not worried about Shoma for him. This year, whatever. Shoma could beat him this year at Worlds, right? They want the Olympic gold, right? I think they want obviously to win Worlds this year, right? And by the way, I think for what their plans are, I think he needs to win Worlds with a clean program to do what their plans are. However, I'm more worried that he is against Lori Nickel, who is grooming Yuma Kageyama to be an all-around skater. I would be very afraid of Lori Nickel. I really would.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You have Lori Nickel against Ilia, whose mom competed the Aladdin program for 3 years.
for 3 years.
And I don't even remember any of his father's programs.
Yeah, but you do remember their jumps. I mean, it's sort of, and so they would perpetuate that. And again, the idea that like the short program, Shaylin did a very good job at trying to figure out the right vehicle and giving him the right stuff. But I think it's not, let's go see Shay for a week.
No.
I think it's like, let's see Shay today again, like we do every day. And she'll just do one more thing that's going to make it easier internationally to give him the 9 5s for presentation he was receiving in PCS at Nationals.
Yeah. What did you make of Jason? You know, there's a lot of, Barbara Rose Williams wrote quite the comment. She felt Naumov deserved to finish ahead of Jason, which I think is, you know, an opinion that's certainly...
I mean, I obviously read it, just massive amounts of homophobia in that. That's how that read to me. Even though she wasn't saying anything about that, that's the vibe I was getting.
The only thing I will say about Jason this year, and I had heard that he was skating really well in training before he came here. But does he still have the competitive fire? And that's very different than asking if he can still do everything, because he obviously can, right? But does Jason still have the hunger win? Because he's, you know, when Alexa and Chris did an extra season, they were in it for gold, right? They were in it to win a title or win a silver medal. He's not really a medal contender at Worlds, right? And it does feel like I was worried if he was going to finish in the top 4, but his consistency went out, his quality went out. He deserved that Ulrich Salchow trophy. But I don't, like, do you think that Jason is as physically or mentally sharp as he was last year at this time?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, is the fight to do something there. So what I would think could keep Jason around is unfinished artistic business in the competition. And I love the Impossible Dream program, but inevitably, second time around, I don't know how he could be as inspired. I think I am one of the only people, I really liked the Tarzan program, and I was very excited for him to just do something different and keep pushing. And then I sort of understand, oh, you keep wanting to push the envelope, you keep wanting to do these cool things. But so to come back and sort of make errors on like triple loops and double axles, you know, on a program we've already seen and may not have the same excitement behind it. I thought, despite the triple axel fall in the short program, I very much enjoyed the short program. It was a very cool program to see. I really liked seeing it because it's like you're saying, you know, you're not really in it for a medal because you're not going to get one at Worlds, and you know you're not really in it for another national title because you're not going to get one. So what is it? Is it to promote yourself? You've been promoted. Like you...
Jonathan, the truth is, if you talk to the agents, Jason is making money.
Yeah, I bet he should.
He's doing shows everywhere, and they're paying him because people want to see his skating. So in a way, him competing at Nationals is like a business card to people to invite him places, and he does have that quality. And the same thing that happened when he was at Worlds. But, you know, eventually, you know, the Russians, I read this theory, I think it was Alexander Alexandrov who talked about it, and it was in gymnastics, and it had to do with 2-year cycles. And basically, their theory was basically, if you get yourself in really great shape for the Olympics, the following year should go pretty well if you stay in shape. But that after that year, you have to then work out with your conditioning harder to reach a new level of fitness and preparation.
Oh, okay.
And last summer, I think he was injured and he did shows all summer, right? And then we saw him, he's been doing so many shows for so long, but has he had enough hard training? We saw huge improvements in Jason here than we did in Warsaw or in Japan. He looks totally different. I think he can be much stronger by Worlds, but I don't know if he's had enough training to be as strong as he was last year. He just had that spark last year because he was injured the Olympic season. He was so strong last year. This year, he looks good, but I don't feel that from him.
Well, and it's interesting, back to the Barbara Rolls comment. It was just sort of like, did Maxim Naumov do well? Yeah, I think he made a great case for him. I mean, he had errors on the flip and on the axle and stuff, so it's not like he delivered some ridiculously amazing program that felt underscored. But yes, do the judges at nationals pump Jason's PCS? Absolutely. They also do internationally. So I think even with his errors, which I think will be fewer by Worlds, if it's still this whole obsession about maintaining spots, I think Jason is a strong second choice.
Listen, I think Jason will deliver.
Yeah, I do too. And the judges will reward him.
Well, the quality of his spins and footwork compared to the other men. I mean, come on, Stevie Wonder could have seen it. By the way, I did just get a text reminding me that the doctor who prescribed the Sudafed to Andrea Radicon in 2000 was immediately sent home and banned from future international events. One of the things I'm going to dive into is the fact that Evgenia Medvedeva sort of implied that they knew that Valyeva had tested positive before that they even got to the Olympics. And I said, so that means that Russia's admitting, essentially, that
they were in on it.
They were in on it, or that they put an athlete in the team competition that did test positive. So they really did know ahead of time, at least that she had tested positive. So then why didn't they put the other ones in?
Again, knowing they would have yielded the same result, and yet they were like, well, might as well.
Let's be honest. Same coaching staff, same preparation.
Only
if one did it,
has dessert with grandpa.
Why would you only give one?
Yeah.
Notice and why is the focus on the grandfather? Is it to hide from the fact that there's a state-sponsored system? Is that why we hear more about the grandfather and less about Shevetsky, even though no one believes it and they haven't gone against Shevetsky? Because if you look into Shevetsky, you have to be like, all those rowers were banned because of him for Beijing. And why did the Figure Skating Federation hire him?
And again, I think if he's still around, it means maybe that is still a small percentage of getting caught. Because if he had only done it those few times and got caught each time, they would have chucked him. But he's still around, even though he's been caught those many times. But maybe in the big catalog of all that he's done, it is not that great, the times he's been caught.
The longer we see him not punished, the longer I think he's amazing at what he does. And don't forget, I did this in some of the As the Blade Turns, and people miss it or don't see every show. Lu Chen and Dennis brought him to China.
Yeah.
And do you know who went with him? Tatiana Voloshajar.
Right.
One of my former coaches met him at the same at the wedding of Voloshajar and Trankov. So, and of course, a Russian coach immediately sent me a meme of Valyeva, Serena Williams, and Simone Biles, not realizing how that even makes them look racist, which again is incredible. Plus, especially with Simone, there is singular therapeutic use exemption. It's actually quite a lengthy process where you have to have established documentation and test results for a long time.
And it was for Adderall, wasn't it?
Yes, it's not for Adderall brand, right? But it's for like Ritalin or something like that.
It's like an ADD type medication.
Right. But the Russians use that and they go, this is a major psychiatric medication. Now, do I think Adderall can be an advantage? I do. But if someone has ADHD legitimately, they have it legitimately.
It helps them focus. It doesn't rebuild lactic acid or whatever the hell the other thing is, and let you keep training longer than all your competitors. It doesn't.
Do you know why they're really upset about Adderall? Because it's a weight suppressant. If you take it, it can curb your appetite.
Oh, hold on. I'll be right back. Yeah, no, okay.
No, it's actually quite dangerous because it can lead to, it can lead to big problems. So, but listen, there's conversations. Listen, is Simone playing by the rules? Yes. Do you agree with the rules? That's a different question, but she is.
Yeah.
And the Russians are not.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, we definitely know none of our ladies are.
Remember, Raphael told me in an interview that he offered what Irina was taking to Michelle Kwan, and she said absolutely not. And Michelle confirmed that story to me. Yeah. So have that in writing. Like that is, an interesting turn of events, right?
Yeah.
And all
then,
the enlarged hearts and
yeah, hearing all about her strange heart disease, and she needed this special old person medication for her,
Remember that they said that she needed the $50,000 from World so that her mother could get surgery, completely ignoring the fact that she was going on the Tom Collins tour right after and was going to be paid bank.
Yeah.
Listen, the Russians are amazing at propaganda. They put her in longer skirts and her artistry got so much better. I mean,
Right.
they know how to get a talking point out there. So
Yeah.
they are playing chess with everybody else. But I do think it really affects Diana and Gleb because they can't move coaches now.
Yeah. They've become a scapegoat. And regardless of what we think about Diana's skating or nepotism and all this sort of stuff, she is really paying penance for the sins of the mother and an organization that isn't really her. It's a tough situation that affects so many people.
I will say, at the end of the day, I do feel for them. I also think, well, the rest of your teammates are banned.
Yeah.
You push to get on that Olympic team, but those other Olympic team members aren't able to compete, and you're out there competing.
Right.
So, do I feel for them? Yes, but within reason.
She's yielding benefits of that nepotism as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and if she were not a Terry's daughter, they wouldn't be able to, still yield the financial benefits of Russia. And then, I mean, come on, their mother is hosting a show about weight loss as a reality show. That is
where she cited Letnitskaya as a huge success story of hers in the weight department. That was a quote that was horrifying.
John. I mean, is this about the money? Is she bored? Clearly, coaching is not her priority when she is filming a reality show and in the US all of the time. So, I mean, you have to. And then you see Petrosian is nowhere near the level of her former skaters, right? The Maya Romik's performance, and I mean, it seems like the Atari quality control is not alive and well right now. But yeah, I think that's a mess. That's a mess for all involved. But
Agreed.
It is kind of interesting to see her struggle with Diana and Gleb. Because at the end of the day, that Swan Lake is criminal to anyone who's ever watched the ballet. And even the Russians are saying it now. We said it at the beginning of the season, and the fans were like, how dare you, Russia invented the ballet. Yekaterina Bobrova is saying it now.
We're not saying they didn't. And just like having stepped foot on the ground doesn't mean you've absorbed ability to interpret it. Yeah.
Neither did Zagitova, by the way. They put a girl with a gorgeous face in a tutu. She wasn't ballet either.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. But yeah, moving on.
It was Tosca City in the free skate for the men. And I'll tell you what, at least—
Are you embarrassed by that?
Oh no, you know what helps me? Instead of hearing like Sarah Brightman warbling through like an under-supported Nessun Dorma, we got Pavarotti from Camden and we got Domingo from Naumov. So I was like, at least these are good choices.
I was embarrassed, and I'm going to say why. Listen, it's not as offensive as doing woodcutter in this shirt. If you do that, I really think your coach has just given up and has no artistic sense, which I think is actually, I think the less artistic coaches tend to do well in the IJS because it is such an antiseptic system, right?
Yeah.
I think that, but no me quitte pas, je suis malade, even the Notre Dame de Paris, the Tosca, the Carmen, when you have all the music to pick from, and I'm a judge, and you're skating to that, I think you've put zero effort into creating art. I'm immediately judging you. If you skate to Tosca, you need to be Michelle Kwan, and I need to think that you've seen the opera and studied it. If you're just going to give me another Tosca.
Well, and then for some reason, Camden had thrown in like parts of La Boheme also. So I was like, oh, is this just a Puccini matchup the first time we saw it in the season? But then I was like, oh no, it's turning into something else. Nope, now it's back to Tosca. What it does lend itself well for Camden is these big, broad moments, which then he was able to sort of match. For Naumov, who I think is a very lovely skater, it was that kind of almost too grand for him.
I thought he looked rough around the edges and lacking in polish, and I think he needs the ballet lessons and the deportment and the real, refinement. And I felt that what Camden and Jason both had was more refinement. Even if Camden's spins are, something a mother could love, I do think that he looked refined and his skating was bigger and cleaner throughout. And at times it looked like Naumov was rushing and running, but that was also very exciting. But when the point differential for the technical wasn't that strong, it was easy to see that the judges were going to put Jason ahead.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because Camden started with that like fantastic quadruple toe. And then as the program went on, we had the great triple, and then the triple axel sequence got a little wonky. And then we had the issue with the triple loop. And in my head, I was like, oh, now it's going to all fall apart. I literally in my head was like, okay, now it is over. I have to say what really impressed me about Camden was that he like quickly turned around and got back on track.
Yeah.
And is going to go back to Worlds.
Yeah, I think the US men kind of stabilized themselves here. They've been weaker throughout this year, but Naumov, listen, he did great at nationals last year. He bombed 4 continents. I was excited to see him come back at nationals, which was fantastic. At the end of the day, he needs to do this more often. If he wants to move from 4th to 3rd, he has yet to prove to the international judges that he has moved up in terms of his consistency, because
so now who of our men are going to 4 continents? Sorry to
and this is a
pop quiz
for me. I mean,
we know Ilia is not going, and we know Jason is not going.
No, but we know that. One second, I'll get it up on my phone. Listen, we know the dance teams, but I could rattle them off, right? I could tell you what is happening.
Because this to me tells me.
First of all, I saw this list a couple of weeks ago. This just shows that my head is like, but Camden withdrew, right?
We did. Okay.
So we knew that. And Roman
the top 3 aren't going.
So for Canada, it's Wesley Chu, Conrad Orsel, and Roman Sadovsky. Roman, I mean, did he bring the skates? Did he make it? Has he done it? I mean, it'll be Yuma Kageyama, Shun Sato, and Shoma Sota Yamamoto. Sorry, I don't know why I said Shoma. It's Tomoki, Maxim Naumov, and Andrew Torgashev. I think all 3 actually have to step up and deliver. I mean, Tomoki has really underwhelmed for several years. I mean, he was kind of the king of January for a while in his career, and now he's fallen back. He is skating in Japan. I understand that it takes time. I think Torgashev had such a wonderful short program. I think he has
that step sequence. I love that step sequence. Yeah.
He has so much potential.
Yeah.
I would like to see him deliver at that competition. Yeah. If I'm Justin Dillon, I'm looking for him to improve. And Naumov, I want to see him back it up, because I think he needs to start building capital with the judges and also confidence within himself that he can do this more than just at nationals, right? And I think that will make the bigger difference.
Again, this clump of men that are sort of in this like secondary group here in the US, it's interesting because some are very athletic, some are very beautiful and artistic. None of them have given us the consistency. And it's always fascinating when someone can deliver this like fantastic program at nationals, and then I almost have to go back and be like, what the heck were they doing in the fall? And you see that it was just not going well. I mean, this was a very nice nationals for Jimmy Ma.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the body of work and with the system the way it is, especially with world ranking points, you now have to do well at the Grand Prix to do well at nationals, which you always have, but it was more like an unwritten rule. Right. Now you absolutely have to deliver when you go out there.
And what a weird one of the additional weird things about the timing of 4 continents was the release of the list beforehand. So again, the list of 4 continents, entries and alternates could send a message, like if you're Jimmy Ma, if you're, I don't know, who are some of the other, Yaroslav, like, going in, they're not counting on you.
I know the only reason skaters like to go is because it's a big paycheck. Sometimes you can get a win there, but listen, a lot of the North American countries don't typically host 4 continents, right? A lot of the Asian countries do. It's also a strange thing, like Europeans, like Europe is a continent, right? So they have European Union, they have European championships and other things. It's not called four continents for gymnastics. It's like pack rim, but it's always kind of like, what is this, right? And it's kind of an invented competition.
To
It's never.
balance out that opportunity for everyone that they were getting at Europeans, I would think.
I almost wonder, like, should you just go back to having a North Americans and go back to having like an Asian championships, a North Americans, and this because listen, if it's in the US, it's a disadvantage for the Asians to fly over, right? Just for this. And if it's in the reverse, right? And if it is think about what a disadvantage it is for anyone from US nationals to go to four continents right now.
Right.
You just compete at nationals, you're exhausted, and you have to go do a major time change against athletes who could potentially be peaking for this moment to knock you off to set themselves up for worlds.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to me why someone like Amber wouldn't want to go.
Yeah.
Just won nationals.
Yeah. Not worth
it. Not worth it. Just because of logistics, right? But you also, in some disciplines, you sort of have to go. I mean, Mao and Yuna used to battle it out at four continents and then go against each other at Worlds.
Well, and in a full field, ice dance was immense at four continents always, you know.
Yeah. But I think it was wise for Chock and Bates not to go because you remember the season, well, twice, Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer stopped at four continents twice. Once they withdrew and once they had that extended stop in the middle of their program when they stood it to Carmen. Both times it hurt them going into Worlds.
Yeah.
It just knocked them down a peg in the mind of the judges. And they lost both of those times at Worlds.
Right.
So, right. And the consistency and the momentum that Davis and White had continued and their scores rose. And I think that that's very human. I think that Gillis and Poirier have a big opportunity to come out really strong this week. Now, had Chock and Bates been there and they defeated them, that would have been much different, right? I think it will kind of...
Under the circumstances, not only of the timing, but of the illness. And then, what, you think you're going to get better on an international flight like that? I think not. I think they stood to lose more than they ever could have gained.
Look at the irony here. Last year, Gillis and Poirier had the magic Evita program. They were just dominating the Grand Prix. Then Piper has ovarian cancer and they are out from nationals and four continents. And it just dipped their momentum just enough. Well, now this year, Chock and Bates have been leading the season. And now they're going to miss four continents because they're sick. So it's an opportunity for Piper and Paul to certainly have a more even playing field going into Worlds as opposed to momentum. And I think for any of those teams like Carreira and Ponomarenko, any of the US teams that didn't do well at nationals, like Green and Parsons or Zingis Kolesnik, I would be so raring to go and get on that ice.
Assuming they can muster that energy.
You have to.
It's a big ask.
These are athletes, Jonathan. At the end of the day, we forget that they are athletes, right? They are competitors. They are athletes. It's why they are in the business. And let me tell you, if I'm coaching Zingis and Kolesnik, I'm being like, Green and Parsons are vulnerable. Go after it. You know, like I'm going to mind F you on the whole plane. Like, get into it, right? And if I am...
Really, they should just be sleep on the plane.
And if I'm coaching Green and Parsons, I'm being like, you need to show everyone that you deserve to be there. You need to show everyone your experience, your strength, your talent, and that you are not going down without a fight. I mean, this is when you need to rally, right? Like,
yeah, you're right.
And that's where we're going to see their performance. By the way, how they respond to a bad nationals, to me, indicates a lot about who has what it takes. Who is that team, right? Because we don't know. Are Chock and Bates done? Are they not done? So now we're looking at all of these teams to see which ones are we going to back.
Yeah.
You know, and I would look at that. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Torgashev, but also Jimmy Ma and Yarrow stood out in the men's event. But kind of like nothing's changed. They didn't break through fully, but they stood out. But how many times has this been the story?
I know, especially at a nationals. It almost exclusively happens at nationals. But I mean, Yaroslav has high highs and low lows, and that we have not really seen him come out internationally this season.
Yaro still has not worked on his skating or his spins enough that I can be like, you should keep competing. At this point in time, holiday on ice or a cruise ship for both of them. And I think they could both make a lot of money doing it, but they're
It'd
not
be very
breaking.
entertaining in it. Yeah.
I think the field was diminished without Luca Brisson. And I think it's sad that his season has kind of
Yeah. What happened there?
I don't remember. I mean, it's some sort of an injury is why he pulled out, but he's had a tough season. Remember, he was winning all the junior Grand Prix, primed at Junior Worlds, and then that free skate was a disaster. He started this season. Again, it was not strong. I'm hoping he can right the ship and get his confidence back because that's a real talent and someone that's gorgeous. In the junior men's event, it was interesting because I skated with Lucius, who won the junior men's, and he switched to oh my God, Malinin's parents, scored Roman Skorniakov and Tatiana Malinin, and he won. So, that is a growing training center there. And I thought Sasha Fegan looked good. Kirk still has to work on the skating skills, the polish. I don't know why he went for the triple axel or what professional thought that was a good decision. Also, there was a lot of hype about Samuel Mindra and that he looked really strong. And Beck Stromer looked very polished and looks like he has the most ability of some of these junior men. But he, had some mistakes that cost him. But I thought that Victor Pfeiffer did a really good job preparing him. He needs the triple axel in the quad. But you look at it, Jacob Sanchez is at the Youth Olympics, so he wasn't competing there. And I felt like
strange timing.
It's just like a miss of a timing for nationals, just a miss, right?
Yeah, because to think about those people they sent and are doing well at the Youth Olympics, but it's strange.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, do you get dinged if you weren't at nationals, even if they are setting you up to go to an international event? Do they forget?
There had to be an agreement because, again, as we have mentioned, so much funding decision is based on nationals results. What do you do with all that?
Oh yeah, I mean, what? Yeah. So who knows? And Ava Ziegler, though, you have to wonder, Jonathan. She trained with Lindsay for years and switched to these coaches. Lindsay's been injured this year. Ava's been injured this year. Apparently, Lindsay was off the ice, not jumping. Now, they could always check on Live Barn. But you also wonder, did someone at the ice house tell them? Lindsay's also injured. Because everyone is pointing out, everyone was buzzing. Should Ava Ziegler be able to compete at 4 continents? At nationals, was Justin Dillon in on it? Because you would have to get his approval, right? Or is he upset? Because in the past, they want you to compete. But then I wondered, is Ava Ziegler hoping that, okay, you're injured. She's had a nagging hip issue even when I skated with her. Are you making a strategic bet that everybody else is going to be tired from nationals? Everybody else is going to be jet lagged. Let's have a little bit more trained, a little bit more covered, and a little bit more fresh. I don't think it was a good look for her to withdraw from nationals and be on the Today Show. I think that's.
I thought that was peculiar that they put her on there knowing she wasn't going to compete at it.
And I thought it was weird that they would put them on instead of Ilia, but again, they were local. You don't have to, they're right at the rink. They're right there. Great for Lindsay, great for Ava, But the fact that she wasn't competing at nationals is just unusual, right? But is she in a great position to rise to the occasion this week? But it also puts more pressure on her too, because she didn't do nationals, right? So this is where her funding comes down. And she's always been one where Ava's always the underdog within assignments. She's never been able to get those international points. So for her, if she only could do one competition, 4 continents over nationals, will get her those world ranking points for next year, because she only had 1 Grand Prix this year, though she won it, right? And last year, they were again they didn't give her all of the assignments, right? So they've always been fighting for assignments for Ava for like 2 or 3 years now. So she needs those world ranking points. It's very important that she has a good competition this week to set herself up.
But she cited what as her reason for withdrawing?
I would think it was the hip. I think they said injury. They didn't say which injury. So,
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So,
and that's ultimately taking her out of the world's conversation. Not that I think she necessarily would have
it
gone.
did take her out. They named the world team and they didn't name her, although they are still going to name the alternates. And I think in this situation, we named an alternate when they're going to name it in February, the beginning of it. So it's giving some time, and people could get injured ahead of you. I mean, Isabeau Levito, we've talked about her technique for a long time. And I want to talk to you about that situation. You know, when she didn't go on the ice at 4 continents last year, I truly believed that U.S. figure skating had a responsibility to work with them if they continue. And I also think that people fall into this because, you know, she mentioned a sports psychologist, but I think that people need to look at a regular psychologist in addition to a sports psychologist, right? And I think that people think that a sports psychologist is going to fix everything. I don't believe that, right? I think maybe you need 2, right? And that's fine, right? Because you have your needs and then your sports needs. I think to have if there's a bigger issue here than just figure skating, right? And if you are leading a short program and then you refuse to go down the ice at 4 continents, and then they just quietly never discuss what happened.
Right.
I think that there are warning signs there.
Well, and these, I mean, now we can also talk about, I don't like to watch Johnny and Tara, as I think most people are in agreement with me, but I thought Ashley and Adam were doing a very good job. And I was surprised they had the guts at the end. And it was right that they were like, that was a disaster.
Well,
It was a disaster.
You know what they did? They were just real about what was happening as skaters, but also they got better throughout the event. Adam has more experience than Ashley speaking right at this point, even though she did so many commercials, then he had so much,
different skill. Yeah.
But I noticed Ashley really improving throughout the week. There was one point where she said, oh, she missed it too. That's going to cost her a level on the Twizzles. And then here, and I was like, Ashley, like, whoa, like that. I was impressed, right? Some people, found errors in their commentary, but I thought for a new duo, listen, these two have chemistry with each other. They have natural banter, because at one point Adam was like, well, if she has one more fall, it's going to be in a -2. And Ashley goes, and it's not going to happen, Adam. But it was like, that was real between them, right? Like,
wasn't shtick that was pre-planned for an NBC broadcast for a funny soundbite. Yeah.
No, like these two people have been bantering and bickering for, years and years and years. And bring Doug Razzano with them. Why not? Right? Have him show up. I thought that they were strong. Frankly, I want to hear Paulina debate with them.
I know.
She's not just going to let Ashley win on that opinion. She's going to assert herself.
Yeah. It's something about an edge.
Love.
And then the honesty, like, there was also, it was the right amount of like criticism, but yet compassion and experience and insight, but yet also sort of general fandom kind of observation. I thought they did a very good job, but I was impressed they had the guts to, and was glad they did refer to Isabel's thing as a disaster. Those 3 falls, we're talking 4 deductions. And yes, we have talked about her technique on the takeoffs and things like that. Some of those landings, again, I do not do triples. I'm very aware of the situation. Some of them seemed savable. Like
yes,
some
the first
of them
one,
just
she
seemed like the body
down.
gave up.
But Alyssa had said that she doesn't use her glutes when she skates, in her opinion, right? From what she can see. And I had like, her hip has often looked like she favors it. And we've talked about the lack of standard technique and how, listen, almost any time that we've ever talked about an athlete having bad technique, it's come to fruition that they've lost the jumps. Alyssa Liu, Yulobnitskaya, right? Like Isabel, people are like, why are you so hard on her? I'm like, it's not that I'm
Because we wanted to last.
You wanted to last. You wanted to do well. You wanted to be able to fix. This was the same problem with Kirk Agetto. Okay. 3 years ago, I pointed to someone and I said, that Anton is not teaching him how to skate properly and it's going to catch up with him. Well, now everybody loves him, but the skating skills aren't there. And he's trying the triple axel and he has this sloppiness. And people people say when they're young, they'll grow into it. Don't say that. That's too mean. They're young. And it's like, I'm not trying to be mean. You're worried about their future development so that they can be successful
Well,
when
here's what they should do now. Yeah.
right, when they can actually fix it, right? Because he had the under rotated jumps that he would just go out and redo over and over and over with the arms over the head, and that the loop was, double under. And you just saw him train it into the ground, and I was like, oh my God.
They're
he's
solidifying that muscle memory.
I would
Yeah.
look at him at the rink and I'd be like, he's so talented. He has so much potential. And he's being coached in a way with all these under rotations being drilled into his body with no skating skills. And it's going to be so much harder to fix later on. And it felt like watching someone commit malpractice. It felt like this kid is homeschooled, essentially giving his life to be coached in a way where he's learning technique that's not going to
Be sustainable.
be sustainable, not just be sustainable, be successful ever. Right.
Yeah.
And I felt bad for him to the point that I'm actually glad that I don't skate with those single skaters anymore. So I don't have to see it because I used to watch that. It's like watching it, like a relatively American coach try to I don't know, copy the Russian technique. I don't know, without the trimetazidine, right? Like, what are you talking about?
That's the most crucial part. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, come on. Okay. Like, how smart are you? I don't know. Okay. So, but
Yeah,
with
she just sat down on all three.
Isabeau's sad that she started worrying about repeating her national title as soon as she won last year. And it has kind of looked like that. And the fact that she changed the program right before when
What did you think about that move? It was weird and the costume was not attractive, but I was into that program. I thought it was interesting.
Listen, did she shamelessly copy Chock and Bates? Sure.
Yeah.
But it worked for her. I think the biggest thing with Isabeau is that she just has to skate bigger and faster.
I mean, it was interesting because the short program, in my opinion, could have very easily gone to Amber.
I think it should have, but I think it worked. I think they were doing Amber a favor and it's funny because I think the judges, judges are judged for being wrong, right? So you have to think about then you have to think about the psychology of a judge being like, they're going to subconsciously favor the reliable person. And right now, Isabeau is reliable. They will for the short, right? So the short was still the status quo, right? But Amber was
right. Yeah, it was close, but
which was almost like brilliant because then it puts her on the attack for the free skate, as opposed to you win the short, you're so excited, then you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh my God, I could really do it.
Right.
But again, for Amber, this is where people need more than sports psychology. I think that if someone continues to struggle with the long program and they are training, and I would look at how many full long programs she's doing, right, with all of the elements. But I would also
practices were very strong. Like it seemed like she had done the things she was supposed to have done training wise leading up to the event. That the mistakes that are being made in competition are not due to lack of training.
Do you think it's due to lack of self-belief?
100%. And I remember you and Jenny were talking about something where you were really first watching Gracie implode. And it was the idea where she had done a program at I'm going to make it up, but a Skate America or something like that. And she had gone so clean. It was absolutely gorgeous perfection. And then the final jump was like a triple thou or something. And then she just sat down on it because the idea of completing the perfect program was what was almost irking.
Same thing with Sasha Cohen, right?
Yeah.
But I think when that kind of a situation happens, because there was a gymnastics coach that told me that one of the ways that you can tell if someone's had an abusive coach, and this is not all the time, but if someone does a perfect uneven bar routine and then they fall on the dismount. And there was an athlete at a school, it was like an important conference meet or something, and they fell on the dismount on 2 events. And they say that's someone that has a worthiness problem.
I believe that.
They train every day. They're consistent every day. And then the competition, they make a mistake at the end, which is either focus or worthiness, right? That you believe that you deserve it, as your mind started spinning and chaining going to the last event when, as an audience member, we think, oh my God, this is the last element. But a skater often has a spin or two after the jump, right? So in that mind, they shouldn't have mentally been done yet. They should have been like, okay, I have to do this, then this, then this,
I'm
and then
going on. Yeah.
so that could be a sports psychologist issue, or this could be a worthiness issue. And in that sense, I think that they need to look at things like EMDR and neurofeedback and other things to change those core self-beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's nothing negative. I think it's just a reality of what it takes to be in athletics at this point in time. I mean, think
Yeah.
about all the documentaries about mental health for Olympians.
Right.
This is so I think that the amount of pressure that they're under at such a young age. And listen, if a parent is paying for figure skating in this day and age, that's a lot of money. They're probably pretty intense, right? Like,
Yeah, and to carry that weight also, yeah, that's a lot.
and the other thing is, think about this: Isabeau Levito, national champion. Well, Yuki's her agent. Think about who Yuki's former clients were: Alyssa
Right.
Liu, Gracie Gold, whose book is coming out.
Yeah.
Jenny, who quit the Olympic season. I would look at that. Mirai, like athletes that have then struggled once they get that title, right? And I think for a women's figure skater in the US, I think it still is a big shift. When you win, there's an entirely different amount of pressure to
Yeah.
be that person. And I think for Isabeau, the other thing is there's been such a push for Amber domestically, and the fans and the figure skaters want Amber to win, and you can feel that.
Yeah.
Isabeau knows that.
Right.
She's not dense, okay? And people like her. It's not that they don't like her. But I think with Isabeau, she skates like she's trying to protect. Like
Yes.
she does everything very precisely, but she doesn't cover the ice, and she doesn't rouse the crowd, and she doesn't have the speed of the ice coverage. And it's a very measured. I never feel relaxed watching Isabeau anymore. I used to. Over the last 2 years, there's just been this sense that like doom is coming because she seems tense, the technique is wonky, and if you watch the practice sessions, whether it was at the World Arena or whether it's at when the different outbursts happen in nationals and stuff, it just seems like this is a skater who's under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And when someone is under stress and they pull it out, a lot of times there is the time that it stops, right? And you have to wonder, Isabeau is someone who, like Shoma, when she has fallen on the ice, even in practices or competitions, like stays down.
Hmm.
And eventually those kind of habits catch up, right? To where
Yeah.
you haven't
I mean,
trained
again,
your-
that's what it seemed like. It was like with a little oomph, you're talking about the skaters getting like revved up to go to China and like deliver even though they're tired.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of that happening on those landings. It was just sort of like, it doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Well, think about it. If you're tense all the time, can you even get up for the competition, right? And I think for that, if you have bad technique, right, and you grow, and the whole reason that people get upset about your technique, besides if they just don't like it, right, is if you have technique and then you grow, in the back of your mind, when your technique is not
What's there to
something-
trust? That's
Yeah.
when you're
If your
supposed to
technique
trust.
isn't what you're confident in, if you are doubting your technique, you have nothing to rely on, right? Rather than I've willed myself to do this combination so many times. And then with her, the falls were bizarre, but it looked to me like I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hip situation or some situation, right? With her, just look at the opening triple and just look at like how gingerly she fell on some of those things. It was just like she just sat down.
Yeah. Well, and even some of the bizarre spin mishaps in the short, like something just seemed off.
I hope that letting Amber have some of the spotlight will allow her to retool and to come back.
Really been it.
What?
She has really been it in terms
Yes.
of attention for female skating
Just
in the US.
let her have a little bit of the shine, you keep working. No one thinks Isabeau is a bad skater. You know,
Right.
she lost a competition. I think when Michelle Kwan lost to Tara, everybody treated it like, you know, the sky was falling. But okay, she lost nationals. She's still going to worlds. All right. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Right? This is fine. And she will skate another day. And I listen, would I look into a different coach? Yeah, I sure would. Okay. But that's
I don't think she ever will. I think
no, because
lost
listen,
her. Yeah.
the coach acted the way the coach has for a long time, and the parent keeps employing the coach, which is basically saying that you don't have a problem with it. So, um, I would look at that, and that coach's other students also jump that same way. So, I would look at that, and yeah. But for Amber, I think she could be such a star for skating because she's so unique and different and real. And her being, you know, having the pan flag and, you know, she's become more and more herself over the last 2 years. So I'd be interested. It's so funny. Like Amber was still coming up when I first started blogging, and I remember her with her coach Anne Brumbaugh in Texas, and that she had such strong jumps then. And then she went through struggles, and then to see her come back is really great, right? How long she stuck it out. And people want it for her. She does have great jumps. But yeah, I think getting her into the best prime of her life. I actually think that she could medal at Worlds if she skates well, but she has to skate well.
Yeah, I think it's a big ask. I
Well,
hope she does.
if she skated well, I think she could medal. If she skated well consistently, I think she could win. Those are different things. She has
Yeah.
not skated well consistently enough to win unless there were major implosions at Worlds. And the Worlds are not in the US this year. I mean,
And we've yet to see her really put it all together. It's
right.
getting closer. It was closer here than it certainly was on either Grand Prix. So I hope that it continues for Worlds. I would imagine a stage as big as Montreal with as many North Americans as will be there and all the momentum she has. There's a part of me that fears this is going to go one extreme or the other.
I think it could go well,
I
but
hope it
I
does.
understand what you are saying, right? And I've thought of both of those. I think not going to Four Continents was such a smart move, right?
Correct.
And I think she has the opportunity to skate well. No one expects her to medal, but people
Right.
want her to medal.
Yeah.
We already have 2 spots, so it's not like we're at risk of losing a spot. We could gain, which is a nice position to be in. Rather probable. Who knows? Unlikely, likely. Who knows how Isabeau is going to be for Worlds? Listen, if I were Ava Ziegler and one of the alternates, I would I would train. I would train. And right now, Ava Ziegler is my alternate. I don't know about you, but that's my
It
alternate.
makes the most sense. I mean, it was a lovely
Because
moment.
Lindsay's injured. Because Lindsay has had the back and she's had the ankle and
I'd
wasn't
rather have her
jumping.
take the time. Yeah, now is the time to take that time.
What's so funny is that a week ago, everybody was saying, oh my God, can you believe that Ava is going to Four Continents at a nationals? And now everybody's saying, oh, was Ava smart to go to Four Continents? Maybe Lindsay should have skipped nationals. And sometimes it's whichever skater gets to withdraw first and make that call is how this works.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
um,
it did. That was a tough watch for Lindsay because it has been so lovely to see her come up with these and I mean, choose the choreographer she did, have this kind of content this season. She really stepped it up. I look at her in a different way, but of course, this was not it.
yeah, I do think that she needs both Sandra programs last year to kind of further that relationship because it works so well. I would um and I think the biggest thing for Lindsay is listen, she's very tall and she's slower to twitch and get into rotation. And I think that they really need to work on her speed on the ice. Just in general, she's a natural athlete. She's a fighter. I think if they work on just that overall into the jumps. So
Which of course you would not have right now. Of
And the
course.
reason I would use Sandra for both programs is Sandra's not utilized right now a lot, right? Like she's
You look so different than everyone else in a sea of very formulaic programs and music.
Think about how much creative energy Sandra has because she's not doing 40 programs like Marie France or
Right.
Shayla, right? Or David Wilson. So as soon as you go to a choreographer that has to do so many programs, they don't have that extra time or effort to make that one a
How
master.
could they? How could they? And she is such a creative genius, and I'm sure it's just like an explosion of it that she has so much to say and give.
Like, what ice dancer isn't hiring Renee, right?
Right?
If I were Charlie White, I'd bring her in for Ian Sommerville and Emily Bratti and be like, Renee loves this team. She has a vision.
Or have at it. But that I looked up the Green and Parsons programs again. He is the choreographer.
Charlie?
Yeah. So then I'm like, oh, is it one of those things? But again, the Federation just came in loud and clear about what they're thinking about it.
I think Charlie has been more conservative. Look at the difference between when we saw Charlie and Meryl on Dancing with the Stars and how differently they performed from each other. Charlie was, I just remember Charlie doing this unfortunate hokey Mary Poppins thing that he was forced to do for Disney Night, right? But it was still kind of his same Charlie. Meryl was like a different person. It was like, who is that? That's not Meryl the ice skater, right? So I think that Charlie might be a more conservative person when it comes to packaging. In a world where people like a little edge in ice dance sometimes.
I'm a little new because again, one of the byproducts of the IJS is this constant similarity. I want to see something that no one's doing. And you're right. The idea of using Sandra is also not only that she has so much this creativity that's not being utilized, but she's going to give you a look that no one else has.
Well, I want to keep both teams from what he learned from training with Marina. I would bring in an outside choreographer for each team to work with Charlie, to collaborate with, right? Not independently, right? But with, because you will want each team to feel special and each team to feel catered to and cared for. And the reality is that Charlie could be going for 2 spots on the Olympic team rather than having them go for one against each other. And that's what I would try to push for those skaters. Be like, let's all go to the Olympics.
What about Sarah Everhardt?
I'm sorry?
What about Sarah Everhardt? I kind of liked watching her jump.
Listen, Marta Caroli would love her because she's so steady and athletic, right? But then again, her performance problem is that she's so steady and athletic that she's kind of undersells herself. She needs a little more razzmatazz and drama, but she's an incredible jumper and athlete.
Yeah.
And I thought she should have gotten higher scores compared to the rest of them.
I agree. And I'm embarrassed to say, because I'm not always as up as I should be in the junior levels, like I am not so familiar with her work.
You know, her name has been up for a while, but this is unquestionably her breakout.
And I agree. To me, Sarah was the moment of the evening because it was new to me and I was so impressed. And I know everyone's talking about the sentimental moment for Josephine Lee, which was very lovely. What a beautiful moment for Josephine Lee.
Loved it.
It didn't really grab me. But I was thrilled on like an emotional, personal level for her.
So it did and it didn't. I felt Josephine had a determined energy. There was a caution to the way that she jumped and the way that she skated. But I think the potential is right there. And we've seen this skater. Last year, she was really faltering, but she does have that je ne sais quoi, right? In a world where so many of our skaters have under-rotated jumps, and she pulled back on some of the difficulty, but then delivered, right? As opposed to all of the Tammy skaters. Claire Co, did she land a clean jump?
Right.
I don't mean what the caller said. I mean what you saw with your own eyes. Did she land a clean jump?
Right.
Did Lindsay?
I mean, I'm looking at like the things on Skating Square. Audrey Shin, like it's just red, all over.
And Audrey Shin made a post. Who knows if she's trying something new? Is that shows or pairs or what, but I mean, she was, had injuries coming into this, and she had originally started the year looking so much stronger training with the Malinins, and then this went the other way. So I don't know. For her, it seems like the passion died out a little bit in that performance.
Kind of
So,
had her moment during that COVID Skate America, and I think has been chasing that ever since.
well, she said she felt so much more pressure once that happened. I mean, it changed how people talked about her, right? We talk about that upper limit and those things. So, yeah, I think Josephine Lee, I hope just encouragement that this is like, when I was in Boy Scouts, they used to try to like manipulate us to stay in the troop after we got Eagle Scout. And I was in a group of boys where like all of a sudden like a dozen of us got Eagle Scout. Like in our troop, like we started like all getting very driven and organized and competitive. And like we had, right? And then he used to be like, are you Eagle and onwards or Eagle and out? Right? So the same thing, it's like Josephine Lee, you had a good nationals performance. Is it nationals and onward or nationals and out? Right? And I want to see onward, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, the thing here, obviously, we need to get a triple in there because everything was basically solo and an occasional double toe after it. But there, it was something very lovely to it. But to me, again, the big find, the big unexpected moment was Sarah.
well, Sarah looks like she could do a quad. Sarah looks like, right? I mean, come on.
And in the healthy way. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a jumper. That's a
Yeah, yes, she is.
that's like some Gabby Seifert power going on there. Right?
Yeah.
I loved it. I love her, love it. I think Ava Ziegler could have done well at nationals, but if she's injured and they have one competition in, get those world points for
Makes
her.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
But I worry about Lindsay at 4 continents. Do you?
Is she going?
Yeah.
What? That seems like a terrible idea to me.
Well, because she won't have more training time, non-jet lagged, right? Like it just looked like she needs more than 2 or 3 days of practice.
Yes,
Right?
if the whole thing was like she's behind schedule, she certainly isn't getting ahead of it on the way to 4 continents.
I almost wish that they let some of these injured skaters like skip 4 continents and go to the event.
That middle one, yes.
In The Hague or wherever it is, yes. Go there.
Yeah.
Right?
Give yourself time. Because who else is going for the women?
The women, it's Elise Lynn Garcia, that's the Tammy skater, Lindsay, and Ava.
I mean, Elise, this was falls and under rotations and quarters and like what a peculiar choice that was. Is she going because Amber Isabeau said no?
Well, look, they knew that she was the alternate ahead of time.
But even as alternate, that surprises me that she snagged that. Maybe that's a Tammy.
They knew that Amber was good. Listen, they knew that Amber was going to withdraw.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was a decision before 4 continents to withdraw. I mean, look, Camden withdrew too. So.
Okay. So with all of that, Dave, what is your moment of nationals?
I think it was Amber Glenn winning because it's so huge for skating because she's so unique. And even though she messed up, we still love her.
And the messing up was less. But so at least it's that in some ways. And the short program was great. We got the triple axel footage that everyone could now post. What a great moment that was.
Yeah. And you know what? Onwards and upwards for her. I mean, the reaction of her winning was such a heartwarming moment. She wanted it so badly, and I think everyone could see that. So yeah. How about for you?
That's, having judged at the state level for Miss America in several locations, you can always watch who's the quality person behind the scenes based on how the other people respond to them winning. So I have seen people get crowned and the girls in the background are like, But then you see someone get crowned and everyone is so excited for them because they were hoping they would do it. And that's the vibe Amber gives me.
That's a total lie, Jonathan. I actually went to watch the crowning of one of your pageants, and all the girls said that
You there on the night of crowning?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And what were the girls' responses when that person was crowned?
Oh, they were all like sisters. They were all so happy. Well, it was
That tells you they weren't into it. When you rush them and scream and hug, that tells you you chose the quality person that everyone was rooting for behind the stage.
I forget who won. I don't remember.
I don't, but that's why I think
all I remember is that they played "I Have High Hopes for a Living" every time they did anything. Yes, they played that song hundreds of songs.
Every time I hear it, I'm transported back. Yeah.
And then they would like make those catchphrases that they would say that almost sounded like Real Housewives taglines. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah,
it was great.
Slating. Yeah, amazing. My moment, I have to say, there were some great moments in the skating. Some less so. I think it's the promise of Ashley and Adam. I was very intrigued.
They were great.
I think there's something here, and I hope it can continue to develop.
Maybe they can be the Peacock team, right?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
All right. I think we need to bring all the stars. Like, I don't think they need to necessarily replace Tara and Johnny. I am like, let's have more famous former skaters at events because it adds to wattage, excitement, atmosphere. Let's get it done.
Agreed.
Hold an edge, look sexy, everyone. Bye now.